Chapter 894. The prison officer exuded an extremely frightening aura. Han Dong's ability was greatly suppressed and all his destiny equipment were sealed. If he provoked this person, only death would await him. Slaves in room 37. Today it's your turn to go on stage. Those who can survive in the Colosseum may be promoted to intermediate slave. If your performance is excellent, you will also be eligible to be sold. When they heard the two special words, intermediate slave and qualification to be sold, the slaves in the cell seemed a little excited. But when they thought about some things, they could not help but tremble, and the fear in their eyes was difficult to eliminate. Line up in order and follow me. Colosseum. In a slave country, it was common to use slaves to perform Colosseum, and it was also a mode of entertainment for the tyrants. However, the current Colosseum was certainly not dealing with ordinary beasts. There were a total of 21 slaves in room 37, and most of them had a relatively strong physique. Moreover, Han Dong also felt a strong vitality reaction from the slaves, and also observed some aberrations caused by the black water. This showed that they had stronger combat power than ordinary people. However, in the case of 21 slaves appearing together, most of them still revealed a look of fear that they were about to die. It could be seen that the beast in the Colosseum would be an extremely terrible life form. During the journey to the Colosseum, Han Dong deliberately walked with Meritus to prevent other slaves from touching her. Of course, Han Dong was not worried that Meritus would be taken advantage of, but worried that Mary's killing intent would be aroused and something would happen in advance. The black door, shaped like a rib, slowly descended. The slaves were escorted by the warden to an open circular field, about half the size of a football field. The warden here removed the connection restrictions of the bracelet and the anklet, so that the slaves could move freely, but the shackles were still worn in a ring shape, and the ability restrictions could not be removed. Looking around, the black and white auditorium was almost full. However, Han Dong quickly saw that the real audience was actually a minority. These audience members also brought slaves, and there was more than one slave. There might not be more than 20 people in the audience. Luoyang seems to be a country where slavery is the main rule, and this system is deeply rooted. There is even a detailed hierarchical and management distribution model. Han Dong observed that an audience member carried 10 slaves with him. One of them was an extremely beautiful woman who was always by his side. The other 9 were strong bodyguards who wore exoskeleton armor in the style of biological machinery. Miss Mary, you have to disguise yourself a little. Let some lumps or pustules grow on your face, or let your figure change. Your image is not bad in human aesthetic. Try your best to change your image to avoid being treated as an alternative slave. There was a similar system of slavery in Toad City. Meritus knew very well what Han Dong meant by alternative slaves. Thinking that she might be used as a prop by inferior human beings, Meritus quickly revealed her toad form. Pustules grew on her face enough to achieve the effect of disfigurement, completely suppressing her cute appearance. Our ability is severely suppressed. From the expressions of these slaves, we may encounter more troublesome existences here. Follow me closely. Okay. Meritus still couldn't fully adapt to her weakness, and there was some fear in her heart. His pride as a feudal lord was mostly gone, and he hurriedly leaned against Han Dong. At this moment, the ribbed black door opposite the Colosseum slowly rose. They thought there would be a monster similar to Alien, rushing directly into the Colosseum. Who knew that it was still a human who came out of the door? A thin man with deep eye bags who even seemed to have difficulty walking. Such a frail image gave off an indescribable feeling of strangeness. The warden standing on the side of the field said to the slaves, "As long as you can kill the target, you will be promoted to intermediate slave, and will be able to obtain the right to sell yourself." As soon as these words came out, some people were immediately tempted. Moreover, the target was not a terrifying monster like they imagined. If they could really kill it, Their future life would become beautiful. Thinking of this, a man with a thick beard rushed straight toward the target. During the sprint, the man's arm was still undergoing deformation. Some kind of black substance was reconstructing his arm. A sharp black tissue formed on the surface of the arm, like a black blade. This scene was seen by Han Dong, who was hiding in the back. Recalling the black saliva flowing from the slave's mouth, he could basically confirm one thing. Sure enough, the humans living in Shindu, even the lowest slaves, have black water flowing in their bodies. Moreover, they can control the black water to a certain extent and change the direction of the body. Their bodily functions are far beyond ordinary people. However, this degree of distortion in the background of Shindu is just an ordinary person. Han Dong carefully watched the upcoming duel, trying to see the particularity of the target. The man with the black knife had arrived in front of the target. He had practiced the cutting skills in private for more than 10 years and immediately used them. Longitudinal cutting. The black water induced the cell tissue to form a knife, which was stronger than steel. The knife easily cut the skull of the target, and even because of the excessive force, the knife directly cut from the skull to the abdomen. It clearly showed the human body profile to the people present. The target should have died, but because of the deep cut of the body, some kind of terrible potential was completely activated. Because the left and right body was separated, the exposed epidermis, dermis, and internal organs grew twisted teeth. The cut left and right body turned into a mouth. A horizontal bite. The speed was incredible. In the blink of an eye, the upper body of the low-level slave was directly gone. But only the lower body was still twitching slightly on the ground, and the blood mixed with black spots had slowly flowed out. The teeth that grew between the target's body slowly retreated into the body. The left and right body quickly completed the healing and returned to the fragile image of an ordinary person. It was also at this time the warden explained to the audience present, "This is our new product. The regeneration, destructive power, and intelligence are higher than the original beast. Therefore, the odds of this game have been adjusted. The current odds are 5-9-1. You still have a chance to bet. If you are interested in this new product, you can privately inquire about the price after the duel. It is a very good choice to raise it as a watchdog, and it can also reflect your noble status." Chapter 895. To deal with the highly regenerative monster, the best way was to use death magic to directly destroy all the cells in its body and completely kill it. But ability suppression -95%. The black sand, used in this state, was quite bad both in terms of quality and quantity. It was estimated that it could only destroy one arm. If it could not be completely annihilated, it would be meaningless. If he wanted to win, he must find the weakness. According to the warden, since it was a new product, it naturally had its unstable side. Moreover, judging from the weak appearance of the human form, there must be something incomplete. Even if there is a weakness, it will cost a lot to find it. Otherwise, this kind of thing will not be performed on stage. There are two ways now. Avoid battle. Avoid battle as much as possible in the early stage. Carefully observe the battle between other slaves and the monster. Collect as much information as possible, including attack patterns, habits, and weaknesses, as possible. 2. A leader. Obtain leadership in advance. Organize all the low-level slaves that are scattered like sand and launch an attack on the monster. In the case that the slaves all have the black water mutation, the second method is more suitable. Make the best use of everything to increase the possibility of survival. Thinking of this, Han Dong raised his voice and shouted in marked Egyptian, "Everyone come over, and I will arrange the battle plan. I will try to keep everyone alive." Without establishing the leadership in advance, one person immediately jumped out and said in a disdainful tone, "Who are you to listen to?" not waiting for the subordinate slave to finish speaking. Han Dong's eyes showed a fierce light similar to that of a veteran. He directly shot a black substance from his left hand and pierced the man's heart. Although these slaves could control the black water to a certain extent, they were still human. The consequences of a broken heart were difficult to bear. One move to kill. For the slaves who were at the lowest level and did not have much leadership authority, the most direct and fast way to seize the leadership was strength display. However, the effect was beyond Han Dong's expectations. Priest. There is a priest among the slaves. The effect of Han Dong's black sand piercing the heart was not only to gain the right to the collar, but also to the attention of the audience and even the warden. One of the spectators even stood up and tried to negotiate with the staff of the Colosseum. He wanted to stop the match and buy Han Dong at a high price. The warden stared at the slave who had fallen to the ground, and the flesh on his chest that was gradually eroding away. He said in a low voice, "It's the power of Anubis." At the same time, he ordered the staff around him to temporarily stop the sale of this batch of slaves and let the competition continue. Priest. Could it be that magic had a special meaning in the holy capital? Just nice. In this way, the remaining slaves all gathered towards Han Dong. I need a sturdy net with a length and width of at least 4 meters. Can you make it with the black water? I can, but I might not be enough by myself. I can do it too, I'll help too. The identity of the priest made this group of people see a ray of hope for survival, and Han Dong's first order was not to let them die, but it was a plan that sounded useful. The process of weaving the net was similar to the first slave building a black blade on his arm. Through the black water in the body, the cell proliferation and keratinization were intensified, and a tough black net was slowly woven. Fortunately, the movement of the monster was slow enough to give everyone enough time to weave the net. Miss Mary, try not to have too many combat movements in this game. Just leave it all to me. If the two of us show magic at the same time, it may lead to a fight between different slave owners, causing us to be forced to separate. Well, for such inferior creatures, I don't want to do anything. Since you are eager to show off, I'll give you the opportunity. There seem to be a lot of slave owners in the stands who are interested in you. If they buy you back, it will be more convenient for you to explore the holy capital. Han Dong did not reply much. In fact, there was another reason why he did not let Meritus do it. From the beginning of the cooperation, Han Dong had not really seen her ability, and it was not easy to arrange it. The tough black net with a width of 5 meters had been completed. After Han Dong gave the battle plan, everyone acted together. The black net was cast. The slow-moving target was easily shrouded in it. Immediately, the more powerful slaves pressed the black net, limiting the target's movement. At this time, according to Han Dong's instructions, the slaves used the distortion of the black water to build spears on their arms, to attack the target as far away as possible. Swished, a black spear passed through the net and pierced the target's body. These attacks were not random, and they were all aimed at the theoretically fatal part as much as possible. Han Dong stood at the corner of the black net and observed carefully. Heart puncture ineffective. Brain puncture ineffective. Digestive system ineffective. Reproductive system ineffective. No matter what part was damaged, the target was still expressionless, and there was no decline in vitality. Moreover, the pierced part also grew a multiplying mouth, biting the black net hard. It would not last long. Before everyone could consider how to repair the black net, a worse situation appeared. An arm was cut off by a spear. When the arm fell to the ground, it immediately evolved into an independent life. Through an opening in the black net that had been bitten, it jumped to the nearest slave. The speed was so fast that it avoided the attack of the spear and jumped to the face of the slave. The palm and the face were attached. In less than a second, it completed complete control of the slave. Swish. Instead, it waved the spear in its hand and directly pierced the head of the slave controlling the black net. The black net also slowly showed a trend of losing control. At this moment, a cloud of black sand came and covered the arm like a swarm of bees, eroding death. As Han Dong initially estimated, it was still possible to destroy an arm. As the arm was completely broken, the slave under control also fell to the ground and died. Han Dong immediately rushed to the slave under control and performed a super-fast autopsy. I said that such a fast body control is not connected to the brain, but the control of the secondary nerve center, which is the spine. Since the spine is the core, is the key and weakness of the target also in the spine? Recalling the situation of the target being pierced and cut, its spine always remained intact, and the bone hardness was harder than the black water structure of the slaves. Everyone stop attacking and pull in the net. Before the black net was completely destroyed, everyone grabbed the corners and pulled hard, to pull in the net. Han Dong braced himself and tried to activate the little magic eye in a suppressed state. As a crack formed on the forehead and the eyes opened slightly, Han Dong staggered and almost fainted. The activation of the little magic eye consumed too much energy and caused the brain to be dizzy. At this moment, a cold soft palm was placed on Han Dong's back. A stream of clear water with chaotic energy was injected into the body, charging Han Dong. "Thank you, Miss Mary." Han Dong, who had recovered from the dizziness, rushed toward the strange shape in the center of the black net. When he was about 2 meters away, the target, bound in the black net, looked at Han Dong with a very strange look. This kind of look contained both anger and a kind of begging, as if begging Han Dong to kill him. Suddenly, the target opened his mouth and faced Han Dong. It was similar to the attack of the classic monster, Alien. Whoosh! A pitch-black column-shaped object with a sharp structure was instantly shot from the mouth. The speed was so fast that it could instantly kill any slave present. See through, even if Han Dong saw the attack in advance through the little magic eye, it was difficult for his body to keep up. Whoosh! The column-shaped tongue penetrated Han Dong's left shoulder. Die! Han Dong endured the pain and lifted the index finger of his left hand. The black sand turned into a sharp blade and vertically cut off the disgusting column-shaped tongue. This hunting tongue seemed to be a very important part of the target, causing it to fall into a hideous state of extreme pain. Seize the opportunity. The power contained in Han Dong's right arm was fully activated. A little holy blood stimulated the G-virus to intensify. When the iconic G-eye was formed, the right arm was completely lost. Tearing the skin of the target's back with his sharp claws, he grabbed the spine overflowing with black light. Gritting his teeth, he pulled with all his strength. Whoosh! Bone extraction. In front of the whole audience and the warden, Han Dong forcibly peeled off the entire 1-meter-long black spine, and the target also died on the spot. However, the black spine in Han Dong's hand was like a centipede frantically pulling. It seemed to be a living prop for Han Dong to use. Chapter 896. Acquired Slave Equipment. John's Spine Quality. The slave equipment is a special equipment in the world of Prometheus. It will not be restricted by the seal in Shen Du once obtained. It can be used normally. Type: Living Armor Quality. Quality: Equipment Special Effect. Frowny Face Exoskeleton. When the user wears the spine, it will form an exoskeleton protective layer that adapts to the individual. The protective layer can be applied to the whole body, or it can be applied to a part of the body. It can increase the defense, regeneration, and mobility of the part covered by the spine to a certain extent. Source: John is a poor slave who was born with severe bone hyperplasia. The spine was completely exposed when he was born, almost restricting all his basic activities. Being removed from the spine may be a kind of relief for him. At the same time, when the spine was removed, Han Dong received a special destiny prompt from Shen Du. Since it was a living equipment recognized by the system, Han Dong was completely relieved. Letting the spine crawl on his body like a living insect, The spine quickly came to the area of Han Dong's back and formed a spine external connection on the center line of the back. A thick black nerve was connected to Han Dong's spine and the back of his head, completing the nerve connection. Now, as long as Han Dong controlled it with his consciousness, he could make John's spine quality. Derive an exoskeleton to cover the whole body, or it could be applied to the zombie arm alone. It had to be said that in the case of limited ability and sealed destiny equipment, this kind of living equipment was really useful and could greatly improve Han Dong's combat ability. In the arena, because of Han Dong's plan and active performance, more than half of the slaves who should have all died survived. Their eyes were full of worship and gratitude. Even Meritus showed a surprised look. She didn't expect Han Dong to be able to adapt and use such a weak body in such a short time. When the cylindrical tongue was shot out from the monster's mouth, Meritus was also sweating. At the same time, because of Han Dong's positive performance, the audience, who were originally only here for entertainment and gambling, became interested and began to ask about Han Dong's price. There was even an audience member who was dressed in golden clothing and seemed to have a certain status who specifically asked to buy Han Dong. However, I'm sorry, but this slave with the characteristics of a priest is not for sale. If you are interested in other slaves, you can go to our slave sales department to purchase them. The warden directly denied Han Dong's right to sell in front of the audience. The surviving slaves were taken to a special area by the warden. Except for Han Dong, the rest of the slaves would be sent to the market. Because they survived in the Colosseum and assisted in killing them beast. The low-level slaves would obtain the right to be sold. Even if it was bought by a relatively ordinary slave owner, it would definitely be 100 times more comfortable than staying here. On the way to the market, this group of people repeatedly thanked Han Dong. Can you make her stay? She is useful to me. In front of the warden, Han Dong pointed to Meritus, who had a lot of pustules on her face. He was also very particular in his choice of words, using the words useful. The warden stared at the female slave who was almost disfigured and didn't show any obvious performance in the game just now. Even if she was sent to the market, it would be difficult to find a buyer. So he nodded and acquiesced to Han Dong's pleading. According to the regulations, you will become an intermediate slave and enjoy a certain amount of freedom. You can move freely in the public area of Chengdu and do basic work to earn money. You can also put your name in the slave market and wait for the slave owner to buy you. Hearing this, Han Dong was surprised. It was the first time he heard of such a strange slavery system. Isn't this the same as ordinary citizens? The identity of ordinary citizens in Chengdu is still just a slave? What kind of identity does the slave owner in this country need to achieve? It's really interesting. A city with serious slavery can still function normally. It is probably directly related to Blackwater. Just when Han Dong was ready to use his identity as an intermediate slave to take Meritus to Chengdu for a stroll, the warden suddenly gave a condition. As one of the managers of the Colosseum, I want you to join us as an employer. We will pay a certain amount of employment fees on a regular basis. At the same time, you will also enjoy the freedom of an intermediate slave and will not be restricted too severely. Excuse me, what do you want to hire me for? Training. Your priest potential is worthy of our training. At the same time, we will also let you help manage the beast, or assist in completing some tasks that only a priest can do. Han Dong could see that the warden valued him very much, so he gave such preferential treatment. With an organization like the Colosseum, as a backer, it would also be convenient for Han Dong to infiltrate the whole Chengdu faster and obtain a complete victory in this destiny event. I have a few questions. Can I ask in advance? Go ahead. The warden seemed to have a very good impression of Han Dong and was very patient. It's my first time in Chengdu, so I don't know the specific slavery system. And what do you mean by priest? Can you tell me in advance? Slavery is the root of Shindu to be exact. There are no slave owners here at all, everyone is a slave. The specific slavery system will be understood when you join us. As for priest, it refers to the human who can extract black water energy and use it for magic. There are many such people in the holy capital who have similar priest physiques. But there are still differences between the good and the bad. If they can only use some common magic, the Colosseum will not be interested in them. The magic you showed seems to have a certain connection with the Grim Reaper, Anubis, so it is very worthy of our training. Han Dong did not expect that the other party would say all his value as soon as he arrived. It really looked like a company with a conscience. Last question, after being hired by you, can I bring her with me? The intermediate slave has the right to buy the lower slave. Because she has just experienced the battle and survived, the price will be slightly higher. It is about 1 month of your employment fee. In addition, we will pay you a one-time fee of 3 months. Deal. Han Dong followed a series of signatures and became a special employee of the Colosseum. As for the famous Lord Meritus in the original world, the atavistic hybrid demon, she naturally became Han Dong's slave. Chapter 897. When Han Dong first entered Shindu and received the initial identity setting from the system, he had a rough idea of the goal of the event. Since the Destiny world deliberately compressed abilities and blocked items, it wanted participants to start from the bottom of Shindu to explore, understand and thoroughly integrate into the city. As for the final goal, perhaps it required individuals to reach a high enough level in Shindu as a slave. Perhaps it required individuals to fully explore the hidden secrets of Shindu and the origin of the Black Water. Or even become the biggest power in Shindu after speculating about the purpose of the Destiny system. Han Dong chose to show his potential to the greatest extent in the Colosseum. While showing leadership, he killed the target directly to gain enough attention. Priest was a factor that Han Dong did not expect. Moreover, Han Dong's black sand was recognized as a special existence among the priests. This was the problem of personal luck value. The world background of Prometheus contained human ancient Egyptian culture. The humans who created Shindu were the early ancient Egyptians who were attracted to this planet. Although their technological development was influenced by extraterrestrial influence, it formed a unique biomechanical technology system. But the deep-rooted culture of the ancient Egyptians was not affected. Han Dong's death magic was recognized as Alubis's magic by the warden. Therefore, the warden accepted this slave with a very good attitude and gave him the best treatment. Joined Shindu's organization, Colosseum, the basic storyline has been activated. Identity: intermediate slave and ordinary employer. Requirements: completely get rid of the slave identity. When the basic storyline requirements are met, you can exit and settle the Destiny event, at least 1 talent point, as a basic reward. At the same time, in other areas of Shindu, similar to Han Dong's inferior slave incident, happened here, even more cruel and dangerous than the Colosseum. In a biotechnology company's incubation plant, a large number of sacks were regularly arranged on the wall. An engineer wearing a living breathing device stood in front of the central console. The engineer's arm was like the structure of a flute, the surface was regularly arranged with circular holes. By blowing the arm, the console was activated. Under the control of the musical note, a mechanical arm examined and grabbed the sacks, hanging on the wall, and sent the sacks to the processing room. In one of the sacks was Mia, who was curled up into a ball. Feeling the mechanical arm grabbing her, Mia slowly opened her eyes. A beast market. Other than the slave trade in Fairy's capital, some of the noble slave owners were also interested in rare and strange beasts. Having a unique and rare beast by their side at all times could also show their status. The largest auction in the market was being held. A beastly youth who was in a deep slumber was placed on the stage as the finale item, bound by the beast pen. White fur covered his entire body, soft beast ears drooped on his head, but his face was that of a handsome and robust youth. There were already several auctioneers who valued this beastly young man who could show off his identity. He could be used as a slave or a pet. At the same time, some performing organizations saw a business opportunity. There were also some buyers from biological companies who immediately reported the matter of the young beast to the higher-ups, pleading for more funds to bring back such a high-quality human-beast experimental subject for research. The situation of Mia and Abel was quite bad. But the situation of little brother Demps was completely different from everyone else. Because of Demps's new king characteristic, he regained consciousness 3 hours in advance. The first thing he did was to fight for the right to sell himself as a slave and sold himself to a female slave owner who had a little power and a lot of wealth. In just a few hours, Demps mixed from a new slave to the level of housekeeper. He was even more favored by the female master than the old housekeeper who had been at home for decades. At present, a burst of comfortable sound that penetrated the body was constantly coming from the bedroom on the top floor. The huge bedroom was full of ancient Egyptian decorations with a mechanical creature style, and a soft, dark bed. The open balcony area was also equipped with an open-air bath. A charming black woman was lying on the edge of the bath, and a handsome young man was providing a unique massage service. Even the lowest level of massage set could give the female master a feeling of heaven. She loved this newly bought young slave so much that she even felt that it was the best decision she had made in more than 10 years. As long as the fingers massaged the joints, the female master would agree to all kinds of requests made by Demp. As the strength of Demps's massage gradually slowed down, the black woman was exhausted, as if she had experienced a great battle, and immediately fell into a deep sleep. Demps, holding a golden wine glass, looked at the strange beauty of Shindu Akamagan. "Nicholas, you really know how to choose. This city is too suitable for your development. I won't interfere with your early development for the time being. After I rest for a while, I will come to you again." The perspective cut back. Colosseum, after signing a series of employment contracts, Han Dong bought Meritus's slave contract with the prepaid employment salary, officially gaining a certain amount of freedom and could move freely in Shindu Akamagan. "You don't have to work today. This money should be enough for you to find a good residence and familiarize yourself with the surrounding environment. Remember, don't take the initiative to cause trouble. About 5% of the population in Shindu die every day. Of course, most of the dead are low-level slaves who have just arrived from the outside. But even if you don't have the identity of a low-level slave, there is still the possibility of death." Han Dong had a good impression of the warden in front of him who took care of him. While thanking him, he also asked one last question. "Thank you for reminding me. Finally, I want to ask, when can I take this thing off?" Han Dong pointed to the black shackles that bound the wrists, ankles, and neck. The warden didn't answer with words. Instead, he reached out and touched the switch of the bioarmor chest position. The bioarmor covering the whole body immediately shrank toward the switch on the chest, similar to a starfish, revealing the original appearance of the warden, a somewhat handsome uncle with stubble. However, this uncle was wearing the same shackles as Han Dong. "I told you. Under Shindu, everyone is a slave. As for the specifics of the slavery system, you can slowly understand it yourself. Perhaps with your Anubis magic, you will be able to reach a deeper level." "Thank you." The answer he got was more troublesome than Han Dong expected. Chapter 898. Currency. The currency used in the Shindu Akamagan was neither banknotes, gold, silver, or copper coins. It was also not a barter method. In this deformed city, There was a unique and irreproducible currency that was closely related to the life of an individual. In order to obtain such a currency, an individual had to undergo a wallet surgery. Han Dong enjoyed such a surgery for free in the Colosseum. A black tubular container wallet was implanted into the right forearm. Due to the large size of the container, half of the wallet was exposed on the surface of the right forearm. The exposed tubular container was also marked with a capacity scale. The wallet was also equipped with a dedicated interface for convenient receipt and payment. Since the wallet was an embedded container, the currency was clear: black water. Black water, known as the origin of all things and the root of Shendu, was the only currency in circulation in this deformed city. Of course, just as Han Dong had discovered in the beginning, the black water also had its advantages and disadvantages. This kind of black water, which was widely circulated in Shendu as a unified currency, was of higher quality than what Han Dong saw outside the planet. According to Han Dong's test results, it was of medium to low quality. The black water stored in the container in Han Dong's arm, which was the 2-month employment fee, was exactly 200 milliliters. Black water below this quality could not be recognized by the wallet. Black water above the general grade would not be stored in the wallet. It would be traded in a special way. It was difficult to exchange general black water for high-quality black water. High-quality goods, comparable to diamonds in human society, were only circulated in the higher levels or in the darker corners. The roads were made of evenly arranged large ribs and cement. The street lamps were a kind of spherical luminous body similar to the body sac of a firefly, which continued to provide light for the city. The houses in the city retained the solid architectural style of ancient Egypt to a certain extent. Some solid geometric shapes, such as squares and triangles, were often used in architectural design. At the same time, the alien biological mechanical style was also added. External characteristics that symbolized human tissue were used in the buildings. For example, some column structures were similar to fingers or bones. Some circular vaults were like large intestines. A layer of soft material was added to the surface of the wall, making it irregular and uneven, just like the internal cavity of a living body. There were even many buildings that completely abandoned the inherent Egyptian architectural style and directly built with internal organs as the foundation to create a strange style of organ building. At the same time, the streets were also filled with malone. All kinds of living vehicles wrapped in skeletal shells and muscle tissues were moving quickly on the road. Some of the vehicles retained the legs structure of living creatures, while others used the wheels structure. However, these vehicles all required the black water as the driving force. The pilots, on the other hand, sat in the body cavity of the vehicle. It was warm and comfortable, and they could even perform some indescribable activities. As for the passers-by walking on the streets, they were all fully armed. Or he brought a group of strong slaves with him. Or they were equipped with bone-like living weapons on their arms. Or directly put on a full set of exoskeleton armor. It seemed that robberies were common in Shendu. Han Dong had never seen the slavery laws in the fairy's capital, but such a severe division of slavery meant that the city was not very peaceful. Thinking of this, Han Dong touched John's spine embedded in his back. He also had a piece of self-defense equipment, and he also carried Meritus, a slave, with him. He looked no different from other pedestrians in the mountains, and generally, he would not be targeted. Even if he encountered trouble, he could use the Colosseum. Judging from the huge building corresponding to the Colosseum, such an organization was at least a medium-sized and large organization in the fairy's capital. This is the fairy's capital? A city born from the combination of high-end biotechnology and ancient Egyptian civilization. It's really eye-opening. When Han Dong saw this scene, there was a trace of yearning in his eyes. Compared to the skyscrapers, network communications, and electronic technology in the world of his previous life, Han Dong was more inclined to such a world dominated by biomath. Perhaps it was closely related to Han Dong's own profession. When he stood on the street and saw the city for the first time, Han Dong's body trembled slightly with excitement. He could not help but want to deeply analyze such a beautiful city. It's our first time going to the fairies' capital, it's better to disguise as much as possible. Miss Meritus, can you learn from the other slaves and follow behind me with your head down? You! No. I don't agree. Meritus was a dignified atavistic body. Nominally, she had become Han Dong's temporary slave. She had done a lot of psychological work for herself, and now she actually had to pretend to be a slave and follow behind him. Seeing this, Han Dong had to turn on another slave mode, companion. Many people on the street also did this, and they were in a state of hugging left and right. On the left was a beautiful and shy girl, and on the right was a muscular man. Han Dong also learned from the other slave owners. His right hand slowly fell on Meritus's waist, and he hugged her to himself. It was a completely different touch. It was different from the touch of Mia, Wino, Miss Jane, and Captain Xiaoya. It was soft but elastic, perhaps it was related to the special material of the toad's skin. Also because Meritus was an amphibian, she had a lot of water. When Han Dong hugged her like this, his palm was covered with water. It was wet and slippery and soft. I'll reluctantly allow you to do this. This kind of behavior would not make Meritus feel inferior. At the same time, Han Dong's name was also recorded in Meritus's mating book. Intimate contact was also allowed. If this scene was passed back to the Holy City, the counselors would probably be shocked speechless. In the city, he was a law-abiding knight, but outside the city, he was hugging with an atavistic body soon. Han Dong found a decent-looking hotel. A pot-bellied boss was wearing a neural interface skull helmet and watching a memory movie embedded in the helmet. He felt the approach of the guest. A large muscle shotgun was directly pressed against Han Dong's head, greeting the customer in this way. How long will you stay? As long as you can. When the boss took off the skull helmet, Han Dong also showed a domino that represented the Colosseum. It turned out to be someone from the Colosseum. I'll give you a discount. If it's a long stay, the average is 1.5 milliliters a day. Before you stay, you need to pay 10 days' worth of room fees in advance. When the boss finished, he stretched out his arm and put it against Han Dong's arm. In the case of subjective consciousness, the wallet was connected and the transaction was completed. Chapter 899. This chapter says it's been blocked, but it'll be unblocked in 2 days. But I can still see it from the background. Someone asked about how Shindu's population is losing 5% every day, most of them are slaves, and how to replenish the population. Aside from Shindu, there are still a large number of humans living on this planet, such as those who have just started cultivating. These humans who live on the outskirts of Shindu have the lifelong dream of qualifying for Shindu. Once they enter Shindu, they will become slaves and will die due to various extreme events. Moreover, in Shindu, an urban society that focuses on biotechnology, strongly encourages fertility and even receives subsidies from black water. I won't elaborate on what the subsidies are for. Binodi's Black Gold Hotel, Han Dong paid the hotel's deposit for 10 days. He received a boneworm key from the hotel owner. The semi-living key can be automatically attached to the surface of the wallet. When used, it will drill out of the palm and interface with the door lock. Opening the door was also subdivided into several steps. Biometric identification and lock-type adaptation. After the boneworm is inserted into the keyhole, it will secrete a hormone to stimulate the transformable fleshy keyhole. Only a specific hormone can expand the keyhole to the size of a normal lock and then match it with the shape of the bone to complete the opening. This security door is much more advanced than the anti-theft door in the original world, of course. Such an advanced biometric lock was not available everywhere. It was related to the hotel Han Dong chose. Not everyone could afford the price of one. 5 milliliters per day. It was considered a medium-sized hotel. When he opened the door, a light fragrance wafted from the guest room. The layout and decoration of the guest room were relatively luxurious. In addition to the bedroom, there was a separate bathroom, a small balcony area, and a slave cubicle. It was Han Dong's first time seeing a slave cubicle. The social nature of Chengdu determined that those who could afford to stay in a hotel would definitely bring slaves with them. A slave cubicle was a must. The cubicle area was small and was equipped with upper and lower bed. Using an adjustable one-way glass, the slave owner could observe the situation in the slave cubicle at any time. As for the overall layout of the guest room, in addition to a soft and luxurious bed and dark creature-style tables and chairs, there was also a set of entertainment facilities. It was similar to the television in hotels in the real world. However, there were no electronic products in Chengdu. The entertainment facility here was called the cranium apparatus. There was a rib frame in the middle of the bed, and a hollow skull helmet was hanging on it. It was the so-called skull apparatus. The back of the skull was connected to dense fleshy nerve cables that connected to the memory signal central sensor in the hotel, and then to the brain server of a memory company in Luoyang. Once the helmet was worn, the internal synapses could be connected to the wearer's brain on a superficial level. Through the biological sensing method, vision and hearing were connected to the brain server of the memory entertainment company. You can watch all kinds of memory programs for free. You can also choose to connect to the brain of a lower slave, equipped with a receiver, and watch thrilling first-person duels between slaves, death-seeking shows, and some restricted programs that require additional charging. If the recipient wanted to experience more exciting intracranial activities, they would first have to sign a contract to allow the cranial instrument to gain more control over the brain. Once all control is obtained, through the craniometer, he could completely connect his consciousness to the body of a lower slave and personally participate in various brutal and hot-blooded duels. Even if he died midway, it would only be the death of his physical body. Of course, in addition to paying a high connection fee, this kind of consciousness connection also required the purchase of the corresponding slave in advance. It may cost dozens or even hundreds of milliliters of black water at a time. Han Dong held the craniometer and said softly, "If the faceless skull is not sealed, it may be able to connect to the brain server of the memory company in reverse, thus obtaining the information of all the recipients and even directly controlling the minds of those whose consciousness is connected. No wonder the fate system restricted us." Han Dong did not wear the craniometer out of curiosity. After all, there was the risk of his mind being stolen, and the brain was Han Dong's lifeblood. The scale of Luoyang was quite large, and it was not easy to find companions. Later, let's see if we can use the name of the Colosseum to go to the slave general market to ask for information about Abel and the others, but they should be able to survive. This kind of opening is also a good growth challenge for everyone. Don't worry, let's take a break first. After a series of events and the acceptance of the biotechnology city of Luoyang with the brain, Han Dong was slightly tired. When he walked back to the dormitory to sleep, he found that Lord Meritus was gone. "Miss Mary?" There was no response. After searching the entire dormitory and not finding her, Han Dong realized that something was wrong and pushed open the bathroom door. A different kind of beautiful scenery was in sight. The equally tired Meritus had fallen into a deep sleep in the bathtub filled with water. She was already dehydrated, so the first thing she did when she entered the room was to find the bathroom. The ragged coat that was originally on her body was casually thrown on the ground. Although the scenery was beautiful, Han Dong did not feel anything. Instead, he sighed. I haven't even had the chance to witness Merides' strength, and I've already been restricted by the system. This level of suppression almost puts all the participants on the same level. Merides' advantage as an atavistic body was also gone. If I fight with other teams in Luoyang, the probability of losing is high. I have to rely on the forces in Luoyang to find ways to improve my status. Demps should also have some tricks up his sleeve. When he thought of this, Demps, who was eating and drinking in the mansion, sneezed loudly. I can't waste any more time, I have to seize every minute. The teams that came to Prometheus are also elites from various countries. Han Dong immediately got up and went to the nearest bookstore to buy a more comprehensive book on slavery. At the same time, he also bought the recent newspapers to improve his understanding of the city. Reading by the light of the lamp. As Han Dong gradually sorted out these slavery systems, his brain could no longer support it. Without the support of the faceless head, Han Dong was just an ordinary person with limited energy. He directly fell asleep on the table. God knows how long later. Beep beep beep. Beep beep beep. Han Dong was woken up by a strange phone call. The sound came from the communicator, snail-shaped, placed on the bedside table. He grabbed the snail shell and put the soft part next to his ear. The snail's synapse automatically connected to Han Dong's auditory system and connected the phone. Nicholas, a day of rest should be enough. The gladiator arena needs your help with something. Hurry up and come over. The source of the voice was the warden who gave Han Dong preferential treatment yesterday. Obviously, the warden directly found Han Dong's residence and phone number through the high-level authority of the arena. Chapter 900. I can't believe it can directly find out where I live and the corresponding room's communication number. Maybe I can use this method to find Demps and the others. Just as Han Dong was about to wake up Merides, who was still sleeping in the bathroom, suddenly, he noticed something strange on the table. The draft of slavery that he had spent hours sorting out had undergone some changes. Is this an auxiliary system? The messy handwriting had become very neat and tidy. The slave system in Shendu was fully displayed in the form of text and text. It even filled in the different promotion methods and privileges of slaves for Han Dong. When he reached out to touch the draft paper, a familiar notification sound came. Frowny face Shendu, a Kamigan, the slave system is being loaded into your brain. Slavery was the foundation of Shendu. It was like a text describing the complex social system in detail. It was all loaded into Han Dong's brain. From the bottom rung to the residents of Shendu, to the managers of Shendu and the higher-ups of Shendu, they were all covered by slaves. Everyone is a slave. If I want to completely get rid of my slave status, I need to be above Shendu. Han Dong stood by the window and looked at the center of Shendu. A black pyramid that could be described as super stood in the center. If he wanted to completely get rid of his slave status, he had to go to the black pyramid to find the answer. The slave system may run through the entire world of Prometheus. In the situation where I don't know when I will be able to fully unlock my abilities, I have to make good use of the power of black water and slave equipment in Shendu. This should be the path of life, given to us by the fate system. That's right. This city is very suitable for me. The identity test that Demps mentioned, maybe I can try to become the Pharaoh of Shendu. The slightly excited Han Dong dragged Maritisla, who was blowing bubbles in the bathtub, out of the bathtub and started his first day of work in Fairy's capital. A huge domed ancient castle corresponded to the main building of the Colosseum. With the ancient castle as the center, there were dozens of domed buildings of different sizes that corresponded to different enclosed colosseums. There were all kinds of colosseums that could satisfy the needs of the audience. As soon as Han Dong stepped into the main building, he ran into the warden who had treated him well yesterday. Although the warden was still wearing the heavy biological armor, he had removed the shackles of his hood, revealing an uncle's face full of stubble. Nicholas, some time ago, due to the loss of control in the creation room, 3 assisting priests died. However, they were the most ordinary priests, and there's still a huge gap between them and you. It's just that we haven't recruited enough people yet. Come with me and help. No problem. Han Dong realized that this Uncle Warden was an honest man. When he asked Han Dong to help with something, he actually revealed in advance that this matter had once led to a death. He could have easily found a reason to say that he didn't have enough manpower and asked Han Dong to help. However, Han Dong also agreed very readily. According to yesterday's learning of the slavery system and the system's prompt, Han Dong's current identity, intermediate slave, was equivalent to an ordinary civilian in Shindu. If he wanted to become a superior slave, he must make enough contributions to legal organizations, companies, or government departments in Shindu. Sir Warden, I'm sorry to ask you to take me there personally. By the way, I still don't know your name. Just call me Basha. Don't worry about it. Your potential is worthy of my attention and training. If the power you have is really related to Anubis, and you can continue to grow, whether it's for me, the guide, or for the entire Colosseum, it's very valuable. Okay. From the warden's preferential treatment and his speech, it could be seen that although the nature of the Colosseum was cruel, its internal management was still very good, especially in the aspect of valuing talents. Taking the elevator powered by the muscle wall press, he quickly came to the manufacturing area. The manufacturing of beasts is extremely important for the entire Colosseum. Since you're temporarily filling in the vacancy, you only need to help a little later. You don't need to participate in the main production process. If you do well, I'll consider keeping you here to work. In addition to the basic commission, you can also get a corresponding manufacturing commission. Okay. Just as Han Dong was about to enter the current manufacturing room, he was suddenly stopped. This is an important area of the organization. Your slave can stay outside. When the warden signaled to let the two separate, Meritus, who was usually very arrogant, actually reached out a hand at this time and tightly grabbed Han Dong's clothes. Although there was still a disdainful expression under the curly hair, her fingers were grasping very tightly. Warden Basha, in fact, I specifically bought her yesterday for a reason. She also has the priest's constitution. However, it's only a relatively common magic attribute. Didn't you just say that 3 people died in the laboratory? It shouldn't be a problem if we both go in to help. Han Dong signaled with his eyes. Meritus also immediately condensed a water droplet in her palm. Water attribute is indeed very common. Haha, if I knew she also has the priest's constitution, I would definitely not sell it to you at such a low price. Okay, then you two go in to help. As Han Dong took Meritus into the manufacturing experimental area, the warden standing outside the door waved his hand, and immediately a group of eyeball devices floated in front of him. Through the connection of the optic nerves, he could directly observe the specific operation in the experimental area. After some operation, originally, Han Dong was only responsible for delivering some materials and providing a little magic assistance at critical moments. As the manufacturing process progressed, Han Dong was finally promoted to the first assistant of the main manufacturer. Moreover, under the proposal of Han Dong, the final finishing work was completed, creating a beast with high stability and meeting the requirements. Even the warden at the door was stunned. When most of the staff in the laboratory left one after another, Han Dong even had a more in-depth biological discussion with the main manufacturer. Looking at the black water, the biological foundation was still the same. As he spoke, the main manufacturer actually picked up the communication bug that he carried with him and directly contacted the higher-ups of the Colosseum, hoping that Han Dong could join his team. At this moment, Warden Basha used his identity privilege to force his way into the laboratory. He pulled Han Dong from the hands of the main manufacturer. Nicholas is someone I value. This time I asked him to come over because I heard that you are short on manpower, so he came over temporarily to help. If there is nothing else, we will leave first. Without waiting for the main manufacturer to respond, Han Dong was directly grabbed by Warden Basha's shoulder and forcibly dragged out of the laboratory. Warden Basha, didn't you just say that I should stay in the laboratory and work? Cough, cough, cough. I thought about it carefully. This kind of low-level laboratory is not good for your development. I will give you better treatment. Come with me. Okay. Han Dong smiled. His goal had been achieved. Chapter 901. The higher-ups have approved. Nicholas, your status has been promoted to senior slave. As for your slave, he has also been promoted to intermediate slave. Your job in the future is to go to the wormhole, to scavenge and pick up some healthy newbies. Han Dong finally obtained the status of senior slave with the permission of the Coliseum. However, the system's restrictions were not relaxed at all, and the abilities restrictions were still maintained in the initial state. At the same time, Han Dong's job also changed accordingly. The scavenger job looked very shabby, but in fact, he could get more salary commission and more free time. He didn't really have to scavenge. Instead, he had to go to the wormhole at the entrance of Shendu and obtain the qualifications to come here. Outsiders would fall into a deep coma in different areas of the wormhole. Han Dong and the others were the same. The healthy newbies would be picked up by different organizations and labeled as low-level slaves. Han Dong would do whatever the company arranged. Anyway, Han Dong was not very interested in the monster creation job that was arranged for him at the beginning. It was nothing more than using the characteristics of the black water to guide the organism to mutate and obtain a more stable monster that could be used as a fighting beast. The black water used for the induction was just general black water, which was not very interesting. Han Dong wanted to get the black water that was evaluated as excellent and high purity through his own detector. Warden Basha, I need your help with something. Can you help me find out where these people are? A white paper with a list of the team members was handed to the warden. Are you sure they are still alive? I'm sure. I'm only 40% sure. If they were ordinary slaves, it would be easy. If they were picked up by some large biological company and used as experimental subjects, the company would completely block the news and it would be difficult to find them. Well, thank you, Mr. Basha. You should be friends who went to Shindu together, right? Since I'm helping you find them, what can you do for me? Han Dong expected this in advance. After all, the warden took care of him because of his potential, so Han Dong had to do something in return. I will sign up for this month's promotion competition and strive to become a white slave. The so-called promotion competition was a special test in the slave system of the divine capital. Any company or organization could only promote individuals to the status of superior slave at most. If they wanted to promote their status, they had to participate in the promotion competition held in the Black Pyramid. A competition recognized by the current pharaoh was held once a month. As long as they could pass the competition, they would be promoted to a higher class of slaves. They might even have some real power in the god's capital. Moreover, Han Dong guessed that this kind of leveling up might be able to remove some of the restrictions on his abilities. The warden's eyes lit up when he heard Han Dong's words. It seems that you have a detailed understanding of the slavery rules in the divine capital? You even know about the monthly ranking competition. Actually, you don't have to be anxious. Although the promotion of your status will also allow me, the guide, to be rewarded by the company. But you've just arrived, and you're going to participate in the ranking competition so soon. There's a high chance that you'll die. More than 10 days is more than enough time. It's not as simple as you think. I happen to have some work to do recently. Come find me when you're done. If you can't meet the requirements that I've set, you're not allowed to participate in the ranking competition. This was the answer that Han Dong wanted to get. It would be great if the warden could provide him with a sparring partner and a strength assessment. Okay, go back to work. The wormhole was a type of wall cavity. There were 72 of them. They were all located at the edge of the divine capital. As for the walls of the divine capital, they were not the usual stone walls. Instead, they were made of living flesh. The height of the walls could not be seen with the naked eye. They extended all the way to the clouds in the sky. It was as if the divine capital, a Kamigan, was built in a sealed living body. Could it be that the divine capital is built in the body of the sandworm that swallowed us? Or the sandworm is the divine capital, a living city? When Han Dong thought of this, his heart was filled with shock. It was reasonable for a civilization that developed purely with life technology to build a living city. In other words, the divine capital was always in a moving state, moving inside this alien planet. Whenever a qualified person arrived, they did not need to enter the city. Instead, the divine capital would directly devour the new slaves. Han Dong showed his Colosseums scavenger pass and entered the number 19 wormhole. There were many black tunnels neatly arranged in the wormhole. Every once in a while, a new person covered in body fluid would slip out of the tunnel and fall unconscious. There were hundreds of bodies piled up on the ground. Most of them were missing limbs or were already dead. Han Dong would receive 5 milliliters of salary every time he picked up a new person with a complete body. Just as Han Dong was about to start his first day of work, he noticed that there was a group of workers in the wormhole who were responsible for cleaning up the trash. Each of them had a strong body and wore an organ-shaped hood. They cleaned up the dead or the disabled new people who had not been taken away by the organization for more than 3 days. They carried 10 bodies each time to the wormhole's garbage dump and threw them deep underground. Han Dong's intuition told him that this might be related to a secret in the divine capital. He quickly found a worker wearing a heart hood and asked in a low voice, "Excuse me, where will these useless bodies be sent to?" However, he did not get an answer. The movers did not turn their heads or stop. They continued with their work. "You're new, right? Why are you talking to these dead bodies? Since these pieces of trash with missing limbs are useless to the development of the divine capital, they can only be fed to the poor creator." At this time, a tall, thin man with 6 arms who was also here to pick up trash explained. "White Giant." Han Dong immediately connected the dots with the movie plot. Haha, it's better to know less. This person had finished his work for the day. He carried 6 complete bodies and left the wormhole with a strange laugh. This person would never have imagined that because he had finished his work early today, his answer on the spur of the moment had become the fuse for the change in the divine capital. Sure enough, the ancient Egyptians who were brought to this planet have already completely devoured the White Giant. The garbage dump at the bottom of the wormhole may correspond to the hidden secret of the divine capital. Maybe the White Giant is imprisoned below, or maybe there's a more cruel scene. To be safe, I'll wait until my ability is basically unsealed before going down to investigate. I can already smell the scent of a derivative plot. Just as Han Dong pretended to pick up trash and tried to get close to the garbage dump at the bottom of the wormhole, buzz. The black vortex on his torso actually produced a slight resonance. Could it be that there's a rampager, marked by the black tower down there? This feeling made Han Dong even more determined to go down and take a look. Chapter 902. This trip to the wormhole could be said to be fruitful. Not only did he fully understand the nature of Shendu, but he also vaguely found a secret area related to the core of Shendu. He also triggered the black vortex. Han Dong was not completely sure what the black vortex meant. If there was a rampager hidden below, He would have to wait until his strength was fully recovered to deal with it. Simply comparing Pennywise's strength, it was clear how strong a rampager was. At the very least, it was extremely difficult to kill, let alone capture it alive. If he could really capture a rampager alive, Han Dong would receive a 100% reward from the Black Tower world, which would affect Han Dong's overall development in the Destiny realm. It was extraordinary. Because it was the first time he came to the wormhole to pick up trash, Han Dong also suffered a lot. It took more than 7 hours to find 5 intact corpses with great difficulty, which could be considered as completing the basic work for today. In just half a day, Warden Basha had already obtained the information Han Dong wanted. Of the 3 people you are looking for, I only got the information of 2 through various channels. Abel Lane was picked up by the Blackwater auction, and then as a special human-beast breed. He was bought by a slave owner with a higher status than me. Due to the auction's confidentiality mechanism for the buyer, I don't know who he went to. Mia Semenovich was picked up by the largest life company in Chengdu, Lane Biology, so there should be no information about her. Unfortunately, about 10 hours ago, your friend actually broke out of her body and escaped during the birth process. She is currently being hunted down by Lane Biology. But don't worry, a slave who can escape from Lane Biology shows that she is extremely talented. If other companies meet her, they will definitely take the initiative to hide her and train her secretly. As long as she passes the promotion competition and becomes a white slave, Lane Biology will automatically lose control of her slave. As for Demps Martin, I did not find any information here. Thank you, Mr. Basha. After receiving this information, at least it meant that everyone had arrived at Chengdu safely. The person Han Dong was least worried about was Demps. He didn't believe that anything would happen to this guy. The reason why he could not find any information was that Dempus might have long erased all information related to him. Mia's situation was a little worse, but it was also a kind of training. That way, Han Dong didn't have to worry about his teammate. He was ready to focus all his attention on the promotion competition that would be held in 10 days. The promotion competition is the only way to improve the status of an individual after reaching the advanced slave level. If he wanted to get rid of his slave status and occupy a certain position in the God's capital, he had to participate. If he missed the competition in 10 days, he would have to wait until next month. No participant of Fate would be able to wait that long. It was the same for Abel and the others. They must have already found out about the competition. There was no need to actively look for them. They would naturally meet in the promotion competition. The only thing I need to do now is to maximize my strength and slave equipment with my current body. Before Han Dong could take the initiative to look for Warden Basha, Basha had already pointed to a small empty coliseum. He was ready to personally test Han Dong. He pointed to Han Dong and Meritus, who was beside him. Since you both have the shaman potential, then come at me together. Under normal circumstances, the promotion competition allows different slaves to team up and cooperate. Okay. Han Dong also wanted to bring Meritus along. He wanted to see how this atavistic physique could perform under the situation where her abilities were suppressed. Before the competition, the warden even took off the skeletal armor on his body and gestured to Han Dong and the warden. Let's go. Okay. It was also at this moment, after a whole day and night of adapting, especially after soaking in the bathtub for an entire night, Meritus had completely adapted to this weak body. She slowly recalled the feeling when she was still a pagan. Jumping power, Meritus jumped up and easily jumped 10 meters high. Her speed was extremely fast. Her throat swelled, and she spat out a water ball from her body. It looked like a very ordinary water ball, but it was completely different from ordinary water magic. The warden also noticed a trace of abnormality and frowned slightly. At the same time, Han Dong attacked from the front. The slave equipment, John's skeleton, was fully activated, and the softened bones immediately wrapped around Han Dong's hands and feet. He completely abandoned the defense of the torso and used it to increase the agility of the limbs. Just as the warden was considering whether to deal with Meritus above him or deal with Han Dong, who was attacking from the front, the situation suddenly changed. Han Dong made an incredible move. His left arm released a series of black sand, but the target was not the warden, but the water ball released by Meritus. When the black sand and the water ball touched, there was a magic fusion. The strange water ball was completely dyed black. Then it turned into an unusually sticky black net that completely covered the warden. Meritus' saliva was highly corrosive in the first place, and when combined with Han Dong's death magic, the destructive power of her saliva had undergone a qualitative change, resulting in a kind of deadly corrosion that could trigger rapid gangrene. Sizzle black smoke rose. A mass of necrotic tissue fluid flowed along the warden's body to the ground. However, Han Dong didn't think it would be so easy to deal with a middle-level figure in Shin-Du. He immediately controlled John's spine with his consciousness and changed the strengthening of the limbs to focus on the strengthening of the right arm. As a result, such a single strengthening was beyond Han Dong's expectations. Well, can it still be like this? When it was acting on the right arm alone, what grew out of the spine was actually a dark gray bone, which was much harder and tougher than normal bones. Not only attached to the surface, some gray bone directly penetrated the flesh of the right arm and became part of Han Dong's arm. Not to mention, this kind of gray bone that penetrated the flesh was quite compatible with the pale zombie arm. Even the structure of the hand claw had changed. It was sharper and more stable. But just as Han Dong stared at the warden and was ready to give this claw, suddenly there was a strange feeling that invaded Han Dong's mind. Although he didn't observe anything, Han Dong's intuition told him that this claw couldn't pierce in. He changed his combat strategy and jumped up instead. He grabbed Meritus, who was ready to launch an attack from the air, and landed steadily about 10 meters away from the warden. Han Dong broke out in a cold sweat when he turned around to look. A strange black arm grew out of the warden's corroded head, and a giant sickle was connected to the arm. The ground in front of him had been cut open with a deep mark several meters long. Very good. That's what I want to test. You will encounter similar situations in the promotion competition. Being able to foresee the danger and decisively abandon the original plan is the best choice. The sickle arm retracted into the skull. The warden uncle used a more elegant movement and gently pushed the hair in front of him with his little finger. With the completion of this movement, the corrosion injuries suffered by his body were all healed. He looked like a normal human, but he was actually one of the most terrifying monsters in the Colosseum. Chapter 903. Han Dong would never play around with his life. At the same time, he believed in his intuition and decided to dodge. Sure enough, the scariest thing in the Colosseum was not the beasts that participated in the deathmatch, but the manager. The warden's hand knife to the skull and ultra-rapid regeneration basically confirmed one thing. The black water that caused the warden to mutate was definitely of medium or even high quality. Of course, it was extremely difficult to control the high-quality black water, which also meant that the warden himself was also quite powerful. If Han Dong had tried to escape the restrictions of the Colosseum and become the warden's enemy when he first came to Shin-Du, it would have been pointless. Due to his excellent performance, Han Dong was allowed to participate in the promotion competition. However, the warden was also quite shocked. He did not expect that the two of them could achieve perfect cooperation, attacking from the air and land at the same time, and using a type of mixed magic. Magic fusion, how did you do it? Han Dong scratched his head and pretended to be a newbie. Haha, I only found it yesterday by chance. Today, I tried it on Mr. Basha, but I didn't expect it to work so well. However, the reason why the magic fusion could happen was closely related to Han Dong's brain. His ability was greatly suppressed, but it was not completely sealed. The source of magic came from the talent tree in his brain. Han Dong, who could complete imitation of all things, could also make his magic have Utode attribute. Seizing this opportunity, Han Dong hurriedly asked about the black water. Mr. Basha, the black water in your body should be much better than the circulating black water, right? Yes, after you pass the promotion competition, you may also receive a direct gift from the pharaoh. The probability is very high. As long as you can survive, the Anubis magic that you have will definitely be valued by the pharaoh. For the rest of the time, take your slave to the trading area in Shindu and buy suitable slave equipment. The promotion competition usually allows an individual to bring 2 pieces of equipment into the competition, so the basic preparation is essential. The living equipment sold in the trading point might be able to help you turn the tide in times of crisis. As he spoke, the warden stretched out his arm and revealed the interface of his advanced wallet. You can't buy anything good with your commission. You don't even have the qualification to go to the trading area. I'll lend you some first. You can return it to me after you finish the promotion competition. There's no need to be polite. If you succeed in your promotion, I'll also be rewarded as a guide by the company. Han Dong kept this friendship in his heart. When the wallet on his arm was connected, he directly received a transfer of 5,000 milliliters. When it was more than 1,000 milliliters, the black water currency would be stored through the compression method of the wallet. Thank you very much. One had to know that Han Dong's employment fee was only 100 milliliters a month. Even if he worked hard to pick up rubbish in the wormhole, it would take him more than a year to earn 5,000 milliliters. Before leaving, the warden reminded him, the trading area seems to be regulated, but it's not completely safe. There are some forces inside that you can't deal with. Don't take the initiative to cause trouble, and don't reveal your wallet. If you run into trouble, show your Colosseum identity. Okay. In the battle just now, after using John's spine, for the first time, Han Dong had a strong interest in this kind of semi-living biological equipment. He immediately pulled Meritus and rushed to the trading area marked on the map. Shendu, a Kamigan, was a city with a serious level distinction, and it required strength mutation to prove its value, so the trading area was indispensable and important. All kinds of equipment, modification technology, parasitic tools, and high-quality black water were used to enhance individual strength. Of course, some strange non-combat tools and slaves that fit the tastes of various buyers could also be directly bought, or even customized. Trading area, East Entrance. In order to minimize the signs of strolling without buying anything and robberies, a series of simple checks would be carried out on the entrance before entering. At the entrance of the pitch-black entrance stood a gatekeeper of the trade fair. He was at least 4 meters tall, and his huge physique gave off an enormous amount of pressure. More importantly, there were several black facehuggers connected by fleshy tentacles on his back. Anyone who dared to enter the trading area would be immediately killed by this person. Please show your wallet, identity card, and slave certificate. With Han Dong's information, the gatekeeper slowly stepped aside to make a path. Well, the black water content is above 1,000 milliliters. Colosseum, staff, slave certificate is legal. You are allowed to enter the auction venue. Thank you. When passing by this person, the instinctive sense of danger made Han Dong sweat. Meritus also gently tugged at the corner of Han Dong's clothes. She almost squealed out loud. As the two passed through the long black passage, the bustling trading area appeared in the form of a street in front of them. Because there was a basic financial audit, people who could come to the trading area at least had a certain amount of money or power. Most people wore masks, followed by a slave exuding a murderous aura, or a fierce beast. In order to facilitate buyers to find what they want in a short time, the trading area was also equipped with a shared guide. A group of slaves who were very familiar with the trading area were chained at the entrance. You only needed to pay 5 milliliters to enjoy their guide service. When Han Dong stepped in, these slaves looked at him with begging eyes and stretched out their arms, hoping to connect with the wallet on Han Dong's arm. "It's the first time here. It's better to bring a guide." Han Dong found a one-armed girl who looked more honest. "Thank you, sir. I will try my best to serve you. What do you want to buy?" "I will participate in a more dangerous competition in a while, and I urgently need to improve myself. Do you have any suggestions? Then I suggest you go to South Street, which has mainly sold living equipment. Some shops provide free transformation surgeries, so that your body can fully adapt to the living equipment they sell. If you need, you can also buy some parasites to help you manage a Blackwater in the front of West Street. Take me to see the living equipment first. Try to take us to some more special shop. If you can buy some living equipment that I personally feel is good, I will give you some Blackwater as a tip." "Okay. I know a shop that is very special, but you need to do an advance inspection before you can enter." "Is it to check my wallet or my identity?" "Neither. The owner will check your body in detail. Only customers whose bodies meet their equipment will be allowed to enter the shop." "There is such a shop. Take me to see it." Chapter 904. Shendu Trading Area, South Street, the main sales area of slave equipment. Due to the nature of Shendu itself, slave equipment was also mainly living equipment. Different forms, characteristics, bones and meat became the main materials of equipment. Han Dong saw the most living firearms. The living firearms here were divided into 2 major categories: external and embedded. External firearms were naturally handheld independent firearms. The surface was wrapped by a hard exoskeleton and the interior was composed of high-density muscle tissue. These high-density compressed muscles had strong power and were used to push the corresponding model of biological bone bullet. The embedded firearms were more special. Once purchased, the store owner would provide embedding surgery to perfectly embed the entire firearm with the individual arm. After embedding, the firearm could be controlled through the brain nerve. Individuals with priest characteristics could also enhance energy emission through the embedded firearms. In addition to the basic firearms, Han Dong also saw some cold weapons. A spear made of the entire super long spine. Some kind of knife insect that could climb on the individual arm by itself. There was also a bone bow that could be perfectly integrated with the back arm. With the strength provided by the bowstring and the strength of the arrow, it could shoot arrows with more power than firearms. However, Han Dong was not born in the crusade, and had no experience in the use of weapons. As for the whole set of exoskeleton living armor, it seemed to be a high-value thing. It was not displayed outside but stored in the depths of the store. You need to express your intention to buy it to the boss and show the Blackwater you carry. While walking on the road, there were even many people who asked Han Dong if he was willing to sell the John's spine embedded behind it. Obviously, such living exoskeleton armor was quite rare. When Han Dong refused and deliberately showed the sign of the Colosseum, these people's faces immediately changed and quickly left. Although the equipment stores seen along the way were quite novel, the equipment sold in different stores were different in characteristic. Some had high damage and explosive power, some had high durability and self-growth ability. However, Han Dong did not stop at all. Since the little girl guide said in advance that there was a special store, he would go and see it first. "This is the store. I will wait for you outside the door." Heise's Nerves was a rather strange shop name. Different from other biotechnology-themed shops, this shop used rather conventional sand bricks. The whole shop was dark gray in color, giving people a very depressing feeling. Moreover, there were no items or equipment on display at the entrance of the shop. It was entirely up to the player to buy or leave. Just as Han Dong was about to drag Meritus into the shop, they were immediately stopped by a strange old man. The old man did not wear any biological armor. His arms were segmented in front of the two of them. The segmented arms were connected by nerve threads. He tilted his head to take a look. Not only the arm, but the whole body of the old man was in a segmented state. The neck and head were also connected by dense nerve thread. It was difficult to explain such a form with conventional biological knowledge. Let me check your bodies. Unqualified people are not qualified to use the equipment I made. All right. Han Dong was still very polite. He stood up straight and allowed the old man to inspect him. The old man knocked the bone embedded in Han Dong's back with his crutch and showed a rather surprised look. Your spine is good. Where did you buy it? This is the spine I pulled out from a monster after I won a special game in the Colosseum. It should belong to the stable core of that monster, and it matches my body. No wonder. At this moment, snap, the old man directly inserted 5 fingers into Han Dong's body, and black nerves grew from the fingertips to check the inside. Your body is different from the garbage here. Good. I'm happy to sell you something. Later, when the old man checked Meritus, he received unexpected nerve-sensing data. You are not people from this planet, right? I have never seen a nerve distribution like yours. It seems to have nothing to do with the black water, but you developed it on your own. Interesting. Come with me. The old man didn't delve deeper and led the two into the dark and depressing depths of the shop. At the same time, the old man's back area split, and nerves were derived from his back to construct an identical clone. The clone guarded the door of the shop and checked the customers who wanted to enter the shop. There were similar clones of nerves inside the shop that managed the shop alone. What kind of equipment do you want? You already have a piece of good quality exoskeleton armor, so you don't need to change it. You can mainly consider weapons or embedded items that can improve your utilization of black water and perception. If you don't have any suggestions, you can show me your ability. It will be more convenient for me to recommend suitable equipment for you. No problem. Han Dong could see that this old man was very capable. He opened his left arm, and wisps of black sand of death floated out. This is Anubis death magic. For a moment, all the old men in the shop turned their heads and stared at Han Dong with surprise. The clone at the door closed the door directly, as if to provide a personal service for Han Dong. When the door closed, all the old men gathered together. The nerves in their bodies were connected to each other, and their spines were reconnected, forming a body with nerve threads floating in the pores of the body. Priest of Anubis, you are still young. If you continue to grow, you might be able to pass the journey of the 9 gates. Journey of the 9 gates? The old man didn't answer. Instead, he guessed the purpose of Han Dong's purchase. I think you should be preparing to participate in this month's promotion competition, right? Since you are a priest of Anubis, I have something for you. The old man took out a metal box that exuded the aura of death. This is my masterpiece 2 years ago. I haven't been able to find a suitable buyer, because no one can control such a thick aura of death. Wearing such equipment will speed up the death of their body, and the consumption of black water will greatly increase. When the box was opened, a jackal head ring appeared in front of Han Dong. The surface was overflowing with a metallic luster. This is bone? You have a good eye. This is a bone crystal that consumed the flesh of 1,000 special dead, and was made with a special process. There is also a death beetle from the pyramid embedded in it. You should be able to control it. Han Dong didn't wear it at all and directly asked, "How much is it?" The cost is about 6,000 milliliters. If you can completely control and use the power of death, I can give you a 50% discount. Chapter 905. The reason why Han Dong directly asked for the price. Not only because he saw through the material of the ring, but also because of the shop owner's true feelings. More importantly, at the moment when the metal box was opened, his left arm trembled slightly. It produced an extremely rare resonance phenomenon. Han Dong had to get the item that could be recognized by the undead sacrifice Imhotep. Although the price was expensive, as long as there was a 50% discount, it was still within the acceptable range. Well, I'll try. This ring, which inherited the bone-refining technology of ancient Egypt, was made from 1,000 special dead and death beetles. When Han Dong wore it on his mummified finger, it immediately caused a strong resonance. For a moment, Han Dong's image was somewhat similar to the Grim Reaper, Alex, but in essence they were completely different. About an hour passed. Blackpool's nerve reopened for business. I'm really looking forward to your performance in the promotion competition. With your characteristics and my creation, you will definitely surpass the level of the competition and become the most dazzling slave. If you are lucky, you may be chosen by the Pharaoh. But it's better to be careful. Thank you, Boss Blackpool. It was an unexpected gain. Han Dong was also in a good mood and gave the little girl 5 times the guide fee. In addition, Meritus also bought a neural embedded device, connecting neckworm in this shop. A kind of neural worm similar to the effect of the chip. When attached to the back of the neck, it would automatically drill into the skin and connect with the cervical nerves. It would also leave a pinky-sized lump in the neck area. This kind of connecting neckworm could strengthen the nerve sensing between the brain and the body, making the reaction speed faster and the movement more agile. The last bit of money left was also used to buy a priest's special spellcasting gauntlet for Meritus in another shop. Just like that, Han Dong only took a trip to the trading area and spent all the money. When the warden learned of this matter, he wondered if Han Dong was cheated. However, when he learned the name of the shop Han Dong went to and the equipment he bought, he immediately decided that the 5,000 milliliters of black water was worth it. Before the start of the competition, as long as there was free time, Han Dong would have an unequal competition with the warden to improve his strength as much as possible and familiarize himself with the newly acquired slave equipment. Han Dong had never thought that he would be invincible just because he had obtained some equipment. The participants who came to the world of Prometheus were all elites, and there were definitely people who were doing better than him. For example, Demps, who was accompanied by the dark-skinned woman, was participating in the auction. The female master also said that if Demps saw something that caught his eye, he could make a bid. He didn't have to worry about the price. As long as he could survive the ranking competition, it was better than anything else. Han Dong was valued the moment he arrived at the fairy's capital because he carried the Egyptian attribute with him. They seemed to have the upper hand. However, compared to the other teams, they didn't have much of an advantage. It could even be said that they didn't have much of an advantage. The 2 teams from Wangdu Megalanry were basically grade 4. Among them, Professor Novikov was grade 5. It was very difficult to obtain 2 fate points in one go in True Fate, except for Han Dong. This group of people had experienced True Fate events at least 4 times and were quite experienced. They didn't come to the world of Prometheus completely randomly. Instead, they used the rights they had won in the past to obtain some information about the world in advance. Therefore, they had made sufficient preparations beforehand. The particle radiation team had completed the gathering of all members within a day. Fairy's capital Anut Shrine, Body Modification Institute. It was one of the 9 buildings near the pyramid. It was the largest body modification and embedded equipment manufacturing company in the fairy's capital. Tesla was undergoing a high-risk body modification experiment here. At the same time, he also needed to perfectly integrate a bioelectric equipment into his body. When the experiment was completed, an assistant doctor made a mistake and was burned to death on the spot by a strong electric current. Although the operation was quite successful, however, Tesla's body condition was not good at all after the high-risk operation. Before the start of the promotion competition, they would spend the time in the resting room. Miss Eva, who was used as a mobile power source, would also accompany Tesla throughout the whole process. "Tesla, don't you think you're going too far?" The weak Tesla slowly raised his arm that was full of sutures. There was even a living suture wriggling in his palm. However, with a snap of Tesla's fingers, the strong electric current directly tore apart a metal decoration in the room. "My ability has been greatly suppressed. I've returned to the early stage of a novice knight. This will cause the gap between us and the group of low-grade fallen knights to become almost non-existent. Of course, the gap between us and the atavistic body will also be very small. You've seen that kid's ability. If we don't take the risk, we may lose the next time we meet them. Prometheus is a world with creatures as the background. This operation has allowed me to fully master the ability of bioelectricity. As long as I can successfully promote, I'll definitely be able to contact the higher-ups in God's capital with electric current, a special substance that doesn't exist in God's capital's technology. This way, I'll be one step closer to becoming a legend in the current world. By the way, how's Walter Griff's modification operation? It's still in progress. It's been 31 hours. I heard that 6 doctors and modification engineers have been seriously injured during the operation. One of them has died. However, Walter's condition is still stable. That's normal. Walter's arms are called the devil's hands by Mr. Nobel. The existence of these hands is against the rules. As long as the operation is completed successfully, the probability of our team winning the final competition will greatly increase. Okay. The Sun Temple in God's capital, the second largest building after the Black Pyramid, was also the largest energy company in God's capital. It supported about 80% of God's capital's life energy supply. The company even created a perfect biological sun so that God's capital, which was located in the body of the city, also had a normal day and night cycle. Inside the Sun Temple, there was a tablet room that required a certain status to visit. A young monk with a scar on his head had sat inside for 3 days and 3 nights without eating or drinking. What a deep-rooted divine culture. Even if it was brought to an alien planet, its divine culture hasn't changed at all. Just as the monk got up, waves of strange energy in the tablet room flowed through the cracks of the words on the ground into the monk's body. A thin layer of sunlight covered the monk's body. He was different from the other participants who took the technological route. This monk seemed to have obtained a little divine power through a special way of enlightenment. Chapter 906. Promotion Competition. It was an important competition formulated and implemented in the early days by the Black Pyramid, the highest governing body in God's capital. It was the only way for the superior slaves to be promoted, and the only way for the lowest slaves to prove themselves to the pharaoh and the various rulers. It was held once a month. As long as the people were given the status of superior slaves by local companies, organizations, or institutions, they could participate. To be promoted to superior slaves, they were at least recognized by some of the middle-level rulers. Out of consideration for talents, the fatality of the competition was not high, but there were different stages. Only those participants who could not even reach the lowest level would die in the competition, and the units that promoted these people would also be punished. As long as the participants reached the basic standards, they would be qualified to survive. Even if they could not be promoted, they could still continue to participate next month. It was also because of such talent protection measures. So the number of people who signed up for the competition every month was more than 3-digit. Of course, these people didn't have the mentality of playing around. They trained hard almost every month, trying their best to improve themselves so that they could adapt to the completely random nature of the promotion competition. In the Black Pyramid, there was a think tank team directly under the pharaoh, known as the descendants of the god of wisdom, Thoth. In fact, a group of brainiacs who could withstand the distortion of the black water with their brains alone. They were responsible for the construction of the mechanisms in the Black Pyramid, and they were also responsible for the setting of the promotion competition. Every month, the competition, whether it was the venue used, the rules, or even the most basic promotion conditions would change. It was like a pure roguelike game. The competition content was completely random. Even if the participants who had reached the standard 10 times but failed to be promoted successfully, they could not guess the content of the next competition. Compared with the newcomers who participated for the first time, there was no difference except for knowing some basic rules. In addition, promotion was not just a promotion of identity. Individuals who reached the promotion standard meant that they could withstand high-quality black water. The Black Pyramid would provide a free mutation surgery to help the individuals inject high-quality black water and stabilize them. Colosseum. After Han Dong got the Ring of Death, he trained for nearly 10 days. Warden Basha could basically conclude that Han Dong did not come from the surface area of this planet and was definitely not a local. It was a rather astonishing rate of progress, which completely exceeded his conventional understanding of superior slaves. At the same time, the Warden, as an NPC in this world, could vaguely see the disparity between Han Dong's combat experience and the upper limit of his strength. It seemed that Han Dong had been suppressed in some way, which led to his current state. Once the suppression was lifted, Han Dong would most likely be even stronger than him. The Warden adjusted his hair. His body, which had been completely cut in half by Han Dong during the spar, had also healed. "I don't have much to give you. To be able to exert such strength with such a body, I'm looking forward to your performance in the Black Pyramid. Your competition will be broadcasted live throughout the city. The viewership ratings for this year's promotion competition will definitely be very high. As long as one wore the craniometer, one could connect to the competition scene through the internal neural circuits in Shen Du. One could even pay to switch to a player's single point of view for the most intuitive experience of the competition. I won't disappoint Mr. Basha." After leaving the beast-fighting Colosseum, Han Dong went straight to the inn. Lord Meritus spent a whole day soaking in the bathtub to replenish her body's moisture. After more than 10 days of getting along, the two did not avoid each other at all. Han Dong directly opened the bathroom door and put a combat tights that he had just bought downstairs in the basket. Because it did not provide any attribute enhancement, this kind of light and combat tights would not be counted as equipment. "Miss Mary, are you in a good state?" "I can only say that it's okay. After all, I can't even use the domain, and can't ensure that I have enough water for a long time. However, I have adapted to this week. With the parasites implanted in my neck and the magic support equipment, I can barely get close to the level of the hybrid demon. Unfortunately, the ability to devour space is completely useless. Otherwise, I will definitely devour the other contestants in the competition. Don't think about it. Out of the protection of talents, there is a high probability that killing is not allowed in the competition. Miss Mary, you'd better assist me. When we completely remove the restriction, you can do whatever you want. I can now basically confirm that the top black water in Fairy's capital may have a certain restraining effect on the mythical restriction of the Bufo. So, please go, Miss Mary. Don't act alone. Be sure to act according to the plan and make sure that our team can stand until the end." After more than 10 days of getting along, Meritus's view of Han Dong had also changed greatly. "I will reluctantly assist you. Anyway, I have already said that if I really get an item that can affect the mythical restriction, I will personally present it. Of course, I will definitely mention your name. Also, Are you sure that your teammates will participate in the competition? If all the other teams are here and we are missing a few people, it will be very disadvantageous for us. Don't worry, they will come back. At this time, Meritus was also in the bathroom and changed into a combat tights similar to a gymnastics suit. Han Dong stared at the wet and white long legs with water droplets hanging at any time. He was not admiring or lecherous, but simply staring at the leg muscles to affirm the unique jumping ability of a toad. Let's go. It was similar to the division of the sacred city. From the outside to the inside, a shendu, a kamagon, was divided into 4 parts, also known as 3 rings, 1 heart. The third ring, the wormhole wall area, which was the entrance of the wall cavity of shendu, it was an important area to pick up and dispose of garbage. It was equivalent to the reproductive organ, which provided an endless supply of new life for shendu. The second ring, various medium and small organizations, residential areas, trading areas, entertainment areas, and so on. It was also the largest ring and the basic structure of shendu's development. It was equivalent to the skin tissue, muscle tissue, and blood vessel tissue, which built the basic framework of shendu. The first ring, the 9 major companies named after the 9 pillar gods of ancient Egypt, which were closely related to the operation, development, and growth of Shendu. The sun god temple mentioned earlier was the head of the 9 major companies. As the largest energy supply company and the manufacturing company of biological suns in Shendu, it was equivalent to the heart of Shendu. The 9 major companies were equivalent to the internal organs of Shendu. 1 heart. The Black Pyramid, a special building where the highest human leadership was located. The pharaoh in the pyramid controlled the country's military, political, judicial, and religious power. His will was the law. In fact, from such a structural division, one could see a very important point. The human leaders who existed in the Black Pyramid had placed themselves above the gods. Chapter 907. Han Dong led Meritus to the front of the pyramid after showing her identity as a superior slave, recognized by the Colosseum. Huge. It was indescribably huge. It was several times bigger than the pyramid in Han Dong's mind, maybe even dozens of times bigger. That was why the Black Pyramid could be seen clearly no matter where one was in God's capital. The surface of the pyramid was overflowing with black light, and the whole thing was like an inherent seal. Feeling the powerful pressure from the pyramid, Han Dong estimated that even if his strength was completely unsealed, it would still be difficult to shake it. Moreover, every black stone used to build the pyramid was in a semi-living state, and the semi-living characters imprinted on the surface would also undergo certain changes as time passed. Whether it was the design concept or the scale, it surpassed President Richard's pyramid in the Void Realm. Of course, President Richard's pyramid was mainly used to communicate with the Void, and it was equivalent to a communication medium. The Black Pyramid here was equivalent to the brain of God's capital, and the original intention of the two was different, which determined the difference in scale and complexity. In Han Dong's eyes, Headmaster Powell Richard was a person with great potential. As Ridray Town grew, he would surely become stronger. Maybe one day, Kieran could use his identity as a shareholder to gain the full support of Ridray Town in the war. The promotion competition, this time, was all from the bottom door on the east side. Nicholas and Meritus of the Colosseum, please go to the examination room 17 for a detailed pre-competition examination. A hunched pyramid attendant wearing a golden mask was responsible for receiving the 2 people, and they walked along the black passage that could completely block perception. The so-called examination room only had a special biomass chair. As usual, the competition will limit the number of equipment carried, maximum of 2. At the same time, external use of black water is prohibited, and the general black water in your wallet will be temporarily kept by us. If you die in the competition, your belongings will be transferred to the organization you belong to. Please sit in the examination seat, and it will test your body condition. As long as you meet the test standards, your data will be uploaded to the think tank. Finally, the parameters of the competition will be adjusted according to the number of participants. Okay. When Han Dong sat on the seat that was like a pile of meat, a large number of synapses immediately came into contact with his body. Similar to the drug test in the Olympics, the participants' bodies would also be checked internally to ensure that they did not take any enhancement drugs or implanted any independent living things that were not allowed by the competition before the competition. This was to ensure that the participants did not have any temporary enhancement buff. Since there are more participants than previous years, we will first screen through a single test. The single test, set by the Pharaoh's think tank, will be held. It will be used to test your strength, observation, and decisiveness. All residents of God's capital, no matter what the cause of death. They will be mummies. They were then sealed in coffins and placed in the lowest level of the Black Pyramid, the Great Burial Area, to stabilize the foundation of the divine capital. Due to the influence of the Colosseum's thought, God's thought. Although the coffins that seal them are quite sturdy, there is a possibility that they will be destroyed. Once these living corpses escape, it will affect the stability of the entire Great Burial Area. For this test, you will need to go to the Great Burial Area alone and kill an awakened mummy. The Eye of Horus set up in the Great Burial Area will monitor the movements of every participant. Once you succeed in killing the mummy, please carry the mummy's head and follow the Eye of Horus's guidance to the preparation area for the ranking competition. At the end of the test, we will screen out some of you based on the quality of the mummy's head. Remember, you are only allowed to bring back one head. The pyramid attendant suddenly mutated. His left and right arms turned into a structure similar to a facehugger, quickly extending and sticking to the walls on both sides. The originally sturdy black wall immediately disintegrated, revealing two passages that led to different areas of the Great Burial Area. Han Dong noticed a problem and immediately asked, "I have a question. Since it's a single test, how can we guarantee that we won't meet in the Great Burial Area? There are hundreds of participants, so there should be a certain probability of meeting in the Great Burial Area." Don't worry. Even if 1,000 people enter the Great Burial Area at the same time, the probability of 2 people meeting is less than 0.1%. Even if there is a possibility of meeting, the Eye of Horus will foresee it in advance and separate in advance. If you are ready, please go. The countdown has already begun. You have 2 hours to complete this single test. Miss Mary, be careful. You should be careful. Meritus did not look back and immediately disappeared into the shadows of the left passage. Han Dong shrugged and walked alone into the depths of the right passage. At the end of the passage was a transport intestine. When stepping into it, the intestine would automatically cover the passenger with a layer of transport membrane. In an extremely smooth manner, the membrane would quickly slide down the intestine. When the membrane was about to reach the exit at the bottom, the friction between the membrane and the intestine would instantly increase by 10 times, slowing down the speed of descent. This would allow the passenger to land steadily. A strong stench of a corpse entered the nostrils. When the membrane on his body and the transport intestine were removed, Han Dong had already arrived at the so-called Great Burial Area. At the same time, Han Dong also understood why the attendants were certain that the participants would not meet. It was because this place was simply too big and their vision was extremely limited. Since the establishment of God's capital, all the dead in God's capital, regardless of whether they were the lowest-ranking slaves or those in power, were all mummified and placed here. Coffins were piled up all over the mountains and plains. There was no end in sight. The mountains were piled up with coffins. The roads were also paved with coffins. Black corpse energy would leak out from the gaps of the coffins at all times, causing the vision of the Great Burial Area to be extremely limited. Han Dong did not immediately look for the resurrected mummies. Instead, He pondered over the fundamental meaning of the Great Burial Area's existence. Why were there so many corpses piled up here? Right, there is also an opening in the wormhole on the city wall that leads to the bottom. The disabled and some dead who are not collected by an organization will be dumped down. The Great Burial Area is also set up at the bottom. It seems to be using these mountains of corpses to suppress something. Forget it. Before my strength is completely restored, it's better not to think about these problems that involve the root of God's capital. I should hurry and find a suitable living corpse. Although his perception was blocked, Han Dong still had other means. Wisps of fine black sand were separated. As Han Dong stepped between the coffins, he was able to check all the coffins within a 10-meter radius at the same time. In just 10 minutes, Han Dong had found more than 10 living corpses, but they were all of poor quality. The heads of low-level mummies would definitely be screened out. He had to find a living corpse that was different from the rest. Han Dong's taste was quite picky. After walking in the Great Burial Area for a full hour, he still could not find a living corpse that he was satisfied with. Considering the time constraints, Han Dong, who was about to settle for the next best thing, suddenly heard a strange sound coming from ahead. Crunch, crunch. It sounded like someone was chewing on something. He slowed down his pace and suppressed his breath. He slowly searched for the source of the sound. A mummy covered in bandages was wantonly destroying the coffins here and gnawing on the dried corpses inside. Chapter 908. What is this? Han Dong, who was hiding in the dark, was a little surprised. The mummy that was rummaging through the coffers was beyond the scope of human beings. 1. Living bandage. The white bandage wrapped around the mummy's body, like a freely controllable living thing, wrapped around the mummy in the coffin and delivered it to the mummy's mouth. 2. Sucking. The mummy's tongue evolved into a second mouth. When the mouth tore the surface of the mummy's skin and flesh, the tongue penetrated the bones and sucked the spinal cord mixed with a little black water. This increased the efficiency of eating and increased the mummy's appetite. Every time it ate a dried corpse, the mummy's body would undergo a certain change. Its physique would increase by about 1 centimeter, and its spine would also protrude slightly and lengthen by a length. 3. Carcass beetle. The coffin made by the Black Pyramid is engraved with a secret text that can suppress the dead. It is difficult for the mummy to destroy the coffin by itself. A large number of carcass beetles are released from the body to destroy the coffin with such a medium. The above 3 points were just the characteristics of the mummy. Its combat ability was also equally powerful. It was the target that Han Dong was looking for. With such a head back, he would definitely pass the screening. Maybe the quality of the head he brought back would be among the best, and he would get some kind of priority in the subsequent competitions. Dealing with such a target must not be taken lightly. Just as Han Dong gently touched the ring carved with a jackal, he was ready to take a new posture that he had just learned. Han Dong was suddenly shocked and decisively gave up snooping and turned to hide behind the coffin pile. Perhaps it was because of good vision. Perhaps it was because of his perception of danger. Or perhaps it was because he smelled a strange smell in the air full of the stench of corpses. The mummy gave up eating and looked at the place where Han Dong was hiding. The eyes that had been completely dried up in the bandage stared in this direction as if they had completed the target lock. What's going on? I clearly simulated the death energy here and made myself almost no different from the dead bodies here. I was discovered 50 meters away. Could it be? Thinking of this, Han Dong immediately changed his mind. The mummy with the curved spine was like a beast and directly crashed into the coffin pile in front of Han Dong. Rumble, the mountain of coffins collapsed. The mummy and Han Dong wrestled together and were completely buried by the mountain-like coffins. For a moment there was no movement. The bandage moved around and rubbed against Han Dong's body like a living creature. The second mouth, tongue, was close to the side of Han Dong's head, and the rotten and smelly body was completely stuck to Han Dong. However, the mummy, on the other hand, did not make any extra offensive move. The tongue, which was only the size of a little finger, slowly extended into Han Dong's ears. Through the second mouth, it emitted waves of decaying sounds that a mummy should make. "You are a priest of the Anubis. I can see the mark on your hand. I can also sense your aura of death. Can't you speak properly? Stop pausing. Oh, okay." The mummy's voice changed into a mature male voice. "The Eye of Horus, made by the current pharaoh, is monitoring the burial area. I'll have to trouble you to have a conversation under the coffin." The original hunting game instantly evolved into a conversation between a master and a servant. The mummy's identity and the possession of the dead felt the aura from the master, and thus locked onto Han Dong's position. Han Dong did not waste any time and quickly asked, "Even if it is hidden under here, there is still the possibility of being discovered, right? I have a few questions that I need you to answer quickly." Han Dong immediately threw out 3 questions. 1. The meaning of the burial area's existence. 2. Why did you come back to life? 3. What can you do for me? According to the mummy, he was called Andieb. He was a white slave who passed the promotion competition and was killed because he was plotted against. The burial area was similar to a barrier. The aura of death released by countless corpses suppressed the thing hidden below. As for what was hidden below, the mummy said that he had no idea. It was a top secret in the divine capital. Mummy resurrection was because there were too many corpses piled up here, and the aura of death was too strong. In addition, the number of deaths in the divine capital was so high that even the Grim Reaper did not have time to take them away. Some individuals who had strong consciousnesses when they were alive, even after being mummified, still had some consciousness left. They absorbed the aura of death here and completed their resurrection. Han Dong's mind flashed. If there is a chance, I want to completely uncover the secrets of the divine capital. Maybe you can do something for me. Will you still come here, my lord? I will come back when my strength is fully recovered. Can you use my will to secretly gather the living corpses here? You must do it quietly and not in groups, so as to avoid being detected by the Eye of Horus. This task made Andieb's face turn blue. Beetles crawled on his face. It will be difficult, but I will do my best. Every once in a while, the pharaoh will send his guards to clean up the tomb area. I am completely exposed to the Eye of Horus, and the guards will come to search for me later. Han Dong suddenly threw out a question. If I cut off your head, can you survive? I am not complete, and there is a high chance that I will die. No, I am already a dead man. To be precise, the loss of my head will cause my consciousness to fade away, and I will not be able to do anything for you. Unless you can give me the power of death from the god of Anubis. I will try. If you are still conscious after cutting off your head, the guards will not come to search for you. Okay. Without hesitation, Han Dong pierced the mummy's chest with his piercing hand. He activated a magic pass down from the high priest of Imhotep and injected a trace of death essence into the mummy's body. At the same time, the consciousness in the brain was guided into the body. Half an hour passed. The pile of coffins showed signs of loosening. Han Dong showed an injured and exhausted appearance and crawled out with difficulty. He was holding a special mummy's head in his hand. The bandage wriggled slightly like a living worm. In less than 10 seconds, the Eye of Horus, which was monitoring the tomb area, observed that Han Dong had completed the test. Whoosh! As some body fluids dripped down, the wall elevator installed at the top instantly descended in front of Han Dong. Through the squeezing of the muscle wall, Han Dong came directly to a hall area. Preparation area. It was a bright and open square area. There were already quite a number of contestants who were holding mummies' heads in their hands. The obelisk with the base of the brain tissue was suspended in the center, and the contestants' names were engraved in ancient Egyptian characters on the surface. A pyramid attendant wearing a golden mask was standing next to the obelisk, receiving the heads of the contestants in turn. The heads that were handed in would be absorbed by the base of the obelisk. At the same time, the name of the contestant would be lit up on the surface of the obelisk, and a score would be given to evaluate the quality of the head. Chapter 909. In the burial area. The quality of the head would determine whether an individual could enter the official competition. Most people were like Han Dong, spending a lot of time searching for prey. The number of mummies and corpses in the burial area was calculated in the hundreds of millions. Anything could happen here. Not only did Han Dong encounter a unique mummy, but there were also other bizarre situations happening in different areas. Somewhere, a mummy with the ability to fuse broke out of its coffin. It could destroy other coffins without limit and take out the corpses inside to fuse with itself. No matter how weak the corpses were, it would not reject them. It was now more than 6 meters tall. At this moment, the giant corpse collided with a white-haired young man. The young man's movements were like a wild beast, fast and agile. He could always dodge the attack at the critical moment and use his sharp teeth or claws to tear off a piece of flesh from the giant corpse. Although the mummy could absorb without limit, its absorption rate decreased as its size increased. The young man consumed without limit, causing its limbs to be completely separated from its torso. The beast-like young man tore off its swollen head. He used the bandages on the mummy's body to carry the giant head on his back. On the other side of the burial area, the coffins here seemed to be taken care of by professionals. They were piled up on both sides in an orderly manner, forming a maze-like burial area. A masked woman was running through the maze at an extremely fast speed. She was wearing an ultra-light exoskeleton armor that did not add any load. There was also a flesh-like groove on the back of the armor that could be absorbed. An unusually sharp bone knife was attached to the back of the armor. There was even a human eye in the middle of the knife. The masked woman was not running in pursuit of something. She was running away. Asterisk whoosh whoosh whoosh. Asterisk a tide of carcass beetles was chasing after her. They filled the maze passage and locked onto the masked woman. These carcass beetles were not scattered. They were controlled by someone. There was a female mummy crawling on all fours in the tide of beetles. Her body was full of holes, and the carcass beetles were drilling in and out of her body. They controlled the tide of beetles and chased after her around the corner. The target suddenly disappeared. Even her scent was gone. Because the target had been lost, the beetles that had gathered in a pile gradually dispersed, preparing to search separately. Asterisk whoosh. Asterisk a tough spider silk suddenly shot out from the top. This kind of close-fitting and lightweight exoskeleton armor provides very little defense, but it has the ability of combat camouflage, which can integrate the woman into the environment. While the beetles scattered, the main body inside was exposed. The spider silk passed through the beetle and stuck to the mummy's head, pulling hard. The mummy was pulled up to a certain extent, and its head was completely tilted up. The neck area was completely exposed. The eyeball embedded in the bone blade locked onto the attack area. Once the semi-living blade locked onto the target, it could provide a certain degree of direction correction when the main body swung it. If the direction of the slash was completely correct and there was no need for correction, it could increase the effectiveness of the slash. He did not allow the other party to react. Whoosh! A white light flashed. In the next second, the masked woman landed 3 meters away. She was holding a bandage in her hand, and the lower end was connected to the mummy's head, which was full of holes. Reserve area participants who successfully beheaded the mummy and came here would receive notifications from the Eye of Horus. The Eye of Horus is still monitoring this area. All high-level slaves who come here, please do not interfere with other participants in any way. Even if there is verbal interference, It may be judged as interfering with others and will be immediately disqualified from the competition. Serious cases will be sentenced to capital punishment. In addition, please send the mummy's head you have beheaded to the obelisk for quality inspection. Your name and corresponding quality score will be displayed. Finally, the top 100 will enter the official competition. When Han Dong came here, he activated the fully armed form of John's spine in advance. He let the soft bone cover his whole body, and at the same time, a pure white bone mask was constructed on his face. Although there was no danger here, it was better to camouflage. Huh? Am I considered to have arrived early? I spent 1.5 hours in the 2-hour time limit, and there are still less than 50 people. However, everyone must be worried about the quality of the head, and spend a lot of time looking for the mummy. Andieb, don't let me down. Han Dong held the mummy's head that was still wriggling in the bandage in front of him, and the black and dry mouth showed a very reluctant smile to Han Dong. He was not in a hurry to hand over the head. Han Dong found an inconspicuous corner and carefully observed every member in the reserve area. Wang Du's guys are really here, although the other party was also wearing the corresponding biological exoskeleton armor. It was easy to distinguish based on some characteristics. The person with the electric current flashing in his eyes must be Tesla. And Walter the Decomposer, who had special arms and needed to be wrapped in unique materials. However, at this time, Tesla and the others were looking straight in one direction. Following their line of sight, Han Dong was also stunned. Dragon City's team, since Hua Zipping had disbanded the Dragon City team in advance in Redra Town, his style was very similar to the characters in the fantasy novels that Han Dong knew. Hua Zipping's swordsmanship still made Han Dong somewhat afraid. However, this time, there was another big boss in the Dragon City team who could carry out a large-scale search through dreams and even carry out a deep dream invasion. This monk is really here. This Dragon City team must be higher in level than Hua Zipping and the others, and they are also the elites of the elite. Even if everyone is suppressed by level, it will be difficult to deal with them. Moreover, this monk is not the only powerful one. This team is very special. It was also a 4-person team. There was no disguise at all, and they took the initiative to reveal their appearance and some physical characteristic. As the leader, the young monk did not wear any living equipment. He only held a plain stone stick in his hand and was sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed, completely unaffected by the surrounding gazes. Next to the monk stood a handsome young man with long hair and a figure that was even better than some women. There was a faint murderous intent in his gray eyes. Although Han Dong's perception was sealed, he could still feel a sense of danger from this young man. In addition, there was also a woman in the team who exuded righteousness, a tall and straight figure, and a determined face. She held a heavy 3-pointed spear in her hand and wore a living biological armor that could be retracted and released on her chest. Finally, there was a little girl with a bun sitting on the floating soil. She should be a person who was proficient in the 5 elements. This monk's position seems to be the same as mine. We are both auxiliary members of the team. Chapter 9-10. After understanding the situation of the Dragon City team, Han Dong thought of a problem. Speaking of which, there are a total of 5 teams that came to the world of Prometheus. We came in through the Toad Gate and have the tag of Toad on us. We belong to the Hybrid Demon team. From the current situation, Wang Du has 2 teams. Dragon City has 1 team. Where did the 5th team come from? Is it a night team from the Sacred City or another hybrid demon team that belonged to the Old King? The latter is more likely. Han Dong looked around. The remaining contestants did not meet the criteria of a knight. After all, the humans that were trained in the spirit of a knight were completely different from the local humans. This could be seen from the way they talked and stood. However, the hybrid demons that could enter the destiny space were mixed with human genes. Most of them were cunning and had the ability to disguise themselves. Most of the contestants that came here were wearing living armor that completely covered their faces. It was very likely that the hybrid demons were among them. "What are you looking for?" A damp smell came from the side. Overlord Meritus had just finished the individual test. She was holding a mummy's head that was covered with spikes. "I seriously suspect that the 5th team should be a hybrid demon team that has a tag and is hiding very well." "Maybe, but there is nothing to worry about." Meritus looked around but did not find anything. Compared to the hybrid demons, she was more afraid of the human team. In a situation where she was suppressed, her level advantage was gone. If she was attacked by multiple human teams, her life would be in danger. Thinking of this, Meritus looked at the other teams and then looked at her team. "Hey, didn't you say that your teammates would come? There are still 15 minutes left before the individual test. Why is it only the 2 of us?" "Don't worry, they will come. It will take a long time to choose the target. There are still many contestants fighting in the tomb area. I think that most of them will come to the reserve area in the last 5 minutes." She waited quietly. In the last 10 minutes, there were more and more contestants that came with the mummy's head. A young man with messy white hair and floating fur all over his body entered the hall. Through the bandages, he hung a giant head on his back. His every action was like that of a wild beast, and his eyes shone with a ferocious light. Even though he had received the warning of safety, he was still wary of the other participants here. "Your teammate seems to have grown a lot." When Meritus saw Abel, he was slightly different from the white-haired youth in her impression. Abel's adaptability should be the strongest among us. When his ability is suppressed, the unknown beast in his body will be released to a certain extent. "Aren't you going to call him over?" "There's no need to rush. If we meet up with the team in advance, our identities will be exposed. If the 5th team doesn't participate, we'll be targeted by the other 3 teams." In the last 5 minutes, another familiar figure came to the preparation area. It was a tall woman wearing a special mask. The creature's light skeletal armor revealed an almost perfect figure. At the end of the bone knife, there was a mummy's head full of disgusting holes. "The appearance of wearing a mask, it feels like the first time we met." It seems that Mia has not only fully adapted to Shindu, but also learned a new combat mode that doesn't rely on spider legs. The quality of this set of equipment is also good. It was the right choice not to look for everyone in the early stage. With a body close to an ordinary person, bearing the identity of a low-level slave, and adapting to survive in the completely unfamiliar and extremely dangerous Shin-do, this kind of starting from scratch experience is a reward provided by the Destiny realm. Unlike Abel, this was not the case. When Mia came to the preparation area, she had been looking around, obviously looking for Han Dong's trace. Unfortunately, Han Dong was hidden in the depths, wrapped in John's spine, and didn't show his expression. In the case of limited perception, she shouldn't be able to detect Han Dong's position. Mia turned her head to the right direction and moved toward the body suspected to be Han Dong. She missed him too much. Not only did she judge by height and physique, she also chose the target because of some characteristics imprinted in her subconscious. Just like between good friends, she could preliminarily recognize each other just by looking at each other's back. When the two were about 10 meters away from each other, Han Dong, who was originally leaning against the wall, slowly stood up. This action made Mia completely confirm her judgment. Finally found him. Different from Han Dong, Mia had been searching since she came to Shindu. Moreover, Mia's situation could be considered the worst of the 5. She had a healthy body and some insect characteristic. At the beginning, she was picked up by a large biological company and prepared to be used in live experiment. She had to rely on herself to escape through the gaps in the assembly line. For the first few days in Shindu, she was completely in a state of running without sleep or rest. Mia had been to all the dark and smelly areas in Chengdu. There was even one time when she used spider silk to sew herself into a rotting fat corpse to avoid a search team. Because she was too tired, she directly slept in the corpse for a few hours. Even in her dreams, Mia dreamed of meeting Han Dong again. Fortunately, Mia, who had some spider characteristics, was valued and taken in by a leather factory. Currently, she was representing this factory in the promotion competition. Mia yearned for a reunion with Han Dong all the time. Now, the man she missed and relied on every night was right in front of her. However, Mia suppressed the emotions that should have gushed out. She didn't hug or cry. Instead, she didn't stop at all and chose to brush past him. The reason was simple. Mia thought about it from a different perspective. Han Dong didn't take the initiative to invite her to meet up at the beginning. Considering the hybrid demon label of her team, if the members of the team met up, it would be easy for their identities to be exposed, and they would be targeted by other teams. Just as the two of them brushed past each other, a familiar voice came from beside her. "Mia, you did well." Ugh, without staying for too long, Mia found a place alone, wiped the tears that fell from under the mask, and adjusted her emotions. Han Dong, on the other hand, was very pleased. This was what he wanted to achieve. However, compared to Mia, he was more worried about the last member of the team. There are only a few minutes left. Where did Demps go? Don't tell me he doesn't take the promotion competition seriously? There were close to 200 people in the reserve area. At the last second, Demps, whose body was covered in a white robe with a vertical collar, seemed to be deliberately waiting for time to arrive at the reserve area as the last contestant. Unlike most of the contestants who were stained with the aura of death in the tomb area, Demps appeared in a spotless state. Even the surface of his pure white robe was not stained. Chapter 9-11. There are a total of 208 participants who passed the individual test. Please head to the obelisk to hand in the heads of the mummies you have slain. Thank you for your contributions to Fairy's capital. Many participants had already handed in their heads. Their names and corresponding scores were also lit up on the obelisk. The 100-point system among the 50 heads, the highest score was only 51 points. It was clear that the grading was quite harsh. "Nicholas, shall we go?" "Don't worry. The scores are generally low. The quality of our heads should be passable. Once we hand it in, it will attract a lot of attention. Let the other teams hand it in first. We'll go when there's a high score." After a while, the two teams from Wangdu moved and handed in their heads. Immediately, a series of high scores appeared. Particle radiation, Captain, Tesla -79 points, Allele. Captain, Professor Novikov -82 points. The lowest score of his teammates was above 60 points. Following that, Dragon City's teams also moved and handed in their heads one after another. Professor Novikov's score in the first place was immediately suppressed to third place. Demon Slaying Clan, Captain, Gusu -83 points. Member, Ordovician Jade, Spear-Wielding Woman, -87 points. The other two team members also had 61 and 72 points respectively. At least in the individual test, Dragon City completely suppressed Wangdu. Of course, the overall strength of the teams could not be judged by such a one-sided test that involved providence. Although the hybrid demons were the common enemy of mankind. But true fate also involved the competition between teams. In the end, only one team could obtain the final reward. When Dragon City's score suppressed the mountain people, the latter showed a certain degree of displeasure. Staring at the sparks between the two forces because of the score, Han Dong could not help but smile. He was still not in a hurry to hand in the heads. He let Abel and Mia go first. Abel Ryan's giant head obtained 71 points. Mia Semenovich's rotten worm head obtained 66 points. It was already considered a high score. It was inevitable that she would be selected for the ranking competition. Meritus, let's go. Han Dong was also rather confident. He delivered the head that was still wriggling with bandages to the obelisk, and it was quickly absorbed by the brain at the base. Nicholas Wallen, 77 points. Phew, not bad. Fortunately, it's not too high. As expected, he didn't disappoint me. I hope that this fellow can help me develop my mummy army in the great burial ground. In the future, I will need this external force. With the death energy injected into his body, it should be able to convince the other mummies. Han Dong needed this kind of slightly higher score. Just as Han Dong looked around and realized that not many people were paying attention to them, he was glad that such a low profile allowed his team to continue hiding. Blurg. Meritus vomited out a special head wrapped in a thin film from her body. Under the bandages was a flawless head. It didn't look like a mummy at all. It looked more like a head that had just been cut off. Meritus minus 91 points. When the score on the obelisk was displayed, it attracted the attention of all the participants in the area. After crossing the score line of 90 points, the only person with the highest score did indeed have such an effect. Tesla's team also quickly confirmed the identity. It's the atavistic body that we encountered in the alien ruins. There's no mistake. The body characteristics are exactly the same, and the surface of the living armor also contains water. Eva, the perceptor in the team, had been coerced by Han Dong for a period of time and had close contact with the atavistic body for a period of time. She clearly remembered all the characteristics of the atavistic body, and could successfully identify the woman who had just submitted the head. Furthermore, in their opinion, only the Yimo with atavistic body could obtain such a high-quality head. On the other side, the group of people in Dragon City's team also noticed the abnormality to some extent. Look at the expressions of those hillmen. The woman who submitted the head seems to have had a conflict with them. Is she a hybrid demon? The woman holding the heavy three-tipped spear immediately showed a strong hostility and was ready to go closer to confirm the identity of the hybrid demon. An invisible aura stopped her, as if there was a Buddha's hand in front of her. A quiet voice that could calm the heart directly sounded in her mind. Xianyuan, this woman is indeed a hybrid demon. There's no need to confirm further. At the same time, we should try not to target them too much in the early stages. Captain, why? Although Ordovision Jade trusted the captain, she could not understand why they did not target the hybrid demons. Coincidentally, there were two Wangdu's human teams here. Shouldn't working together to eliminate the risk in advance be the best choice? Among the two teams in Wangdu's team, one of them has evil intentions. He came to Prometheus with a malicious personal purpose. I have already seen some disturbing scenes in the dream. If he succeeds in his plan, it will even threaten our lives. Since this group of Wangdu's team has become enemies with the hybrid demons in advance, why don't we let this group of hybrid demons stop them? We will try our best to obtain the final reward of this event as outsiders. Although Gu Su's words made sense, the team still had some doubts. However, the team members were also confused. After all, according to Gu Su's personality, he would not let any mantis demons go. This was also the reason why the team was named Demon Slaying Crowd. Captain, is there something we're hiding? Indeed, the current hybrid demon team is different from the ones we've encountered before. Let's let them stop the mountain people first. It won't be too late for us to kill the hybrid demons at the crucial moment. Furthermore, the fifth team hasn't appeared yet, so we have to be careful. What we're going to experience is no longer a small-scale event like before. Instead, it's a chaotic battle between 5 teams. Everyone who comes here more or less has evil intentions, so let's be careful. Yes. 91 points. Such a high score directly caused Meritus' name to appear at the top of the obelisk. Meritus also raised her head slightly, looking like a proud queen. How is it? How can this group of low-level humans be compared to me? You're amazing. Han Dong had a helpless expression. At the same time, he also felt the hostile gazes from Wang Du's team. This way, due to Meridus's excellent performance, all their previous efforts would be wasted. Since that was the case, Han Dong did not think too much and just accepted it. Since the Black Pyramid had shown that it valued talents, then those who successfully entered the official competition would definitely receive some form of protection. As long as the higher-ups gave the order, at least in the promotion competition, they would not be targeted by the three human teams. Han Dong immediately gave his team members a look, telling them not to continue with their disguises and to gather together. The leisurely Dempus also went to submit the head he had beheaded. 60 points, barely passed. However, this score was enough to squeeze into the official competition. Chapter 9-12. The quality of this year's contestants is better than before. The think tank has decided to expand the upper limit of the official competition from 100 to 120. At the same time, the top 5 in the single test will be granted certain privileges. Top 5? Han Dong was shocked. He just happened to be ranked 6th. Fortunately, Meridus was ranked 1st. As expected, the top-ranked contestants were indeed given preferential treatment. As the contestants who did not meet the requirements left, Han Dong immediately looked at the remaining 120 people. Whether it was from the score or the attitude, it was still difficult to determine whether there was a fifth team among them. The perception limitation is really troublesome. I can only eliminate them one by one in the next promotion competition. His identity was exposed. Han Dong immediately changed his plan. His consciousness connected to John's spine and retracted the armor that covered the whole body to the spine, revealing his original appearance. While waving to his teammates, he also deliberately looked in the other two directions. First, he waved to Tesla and others in the particle radiation team. He also deliberately looked at Miss Eva, who had been held hostage for a while and had a certain degree of wavering in her heart because of something. Feeling Han Dong's gaze, Eva hurriedly hid behind Tesla and did not dare to look at him. Perhaps it was because of Han Dong's strength that made her feel fear in her heart. Or perhaps it was because she did not dare to face such a young man that she could not understand and completely shook her worldview. Even now, Eva still could not understand why a seemingly normal human being could quarrel with the atavistic hybrid demon and be quite friendly. Of course, the other members of the particle radiation team and the allele team looked at Han Dong with a look of examining the hybrid demon. They were determined to erase Han Dong and others. Immediately, Han Dong looked in the direction of the Dragon City team again. He avoided everyone and only looked at Gu Su with a smile. Although there was no message conveyed through words, expressions, or actions, Han Dong also clearly expressed a kind of friendliness. As for whether Gu Su was willing to accept this friendliness, it was his own business. On his team's side, after more than 10 days of separation, everyone reunited. The brand new slave equipment coupled with the hard experience of starting from scratch made everyone change to a great extent. This was especially obvious when it came to Abel and Mia. Mia had matured and was no longer completely reliant on her spider characteristic. Abel had become stronger, and his control over his primitive, bestial nature had changed. It seemed that the suppression of this ability had, in turn, released the ferocious beast in Abel's body to a greater extent. Even if the teams met up, Abel was still in his bestial state, constantly emitting his ferocious nature. Han Dong deliberately moved closer and tried to put his arm on Abel's shoulder. Who knew? The part of the shoulder that corresponded to the hair stood on end, but as Han Dong's palm slowly fell, the white hair quickly returned to its soft state. It was also this close contact, the little magic eye that could only exert a little power, faintly glimpsed a faint black beast shadow enveloping Abel's body. At the same time, the blood of the Dragon clan flowed in the blood vessels under Abel's skin. The dragon and the beast fought to keep Abel awake. Otherwise, the beast might swallow the main consciousness and take over the whole body. This situation shocked Han Dong. Strange, the suppression given by Shin Du should be comprehensive. Take me as an example, whether it is the brain or the fate ability, it is suppressed to the same level. Abel should be no exception, and the beast in his body should be suppressed to the range that he can control. Why is there an imbalance now? What is the origin of this beast that it can't be completely suppressed in the current fate space? If it weren't for the dragon blood in Abel's body, I'm afraid it would have already gone berserk. Abel, can you control it? Yes, in this case Han Dong was relieved. Compared to more than 10 days of life in Shindu, Abel and Mia could be said to have lived like a year. Their bodies were left with deep and shallow scars, and their minds were also traumatized. Only Demps was different. From the high-end white-collared coat that Demps was wearing, it could be seen that his economic conditions were very good. This white coat looked like a coat, but in fact, it was a kind of advanced equipment that was integrated with Shindu's technology. The price was not something an ordinary slave could afford. It came from the auction in the trading area, and it cost a total of 26,000 milliliters of black water. In addition, Demps's body exuded a light fragrance, like the smell of a woman. Han Dong could roughly imagine what kind of happy life Demps was living these days. Comparing the two, even if Han Dong's luck was good, because of Anubis' death attribute, he was valued by the Colosseum and the Warden, but it was completely inferior to Demps's superb skills. With just a finger, he could get opportunities that others could not touch. Demps seems to be doing well recently? It's okay. At the beginning, he was a slave and was bought by a rich slave owner. Since the beginning is so smooth, he doesn't know how to secretly help everyone. Oh, this kind of beginning is also a kind of experience, Nicholas, you should think so too. If you help, Abel and Miss Mia won't be able to change so much like now. Besides, Nicholas, your life shouldn't be bad, the ring and living armor seem to be very advanced, and you have a beauty to accompany you. Just as Han Dong and Dempus were exchanging punches and teasing each other, Han Dong and Dempus exchanged punches. Two slender arms hugged him from behind. Oh, Nicholas, I've been looking for you these days. Where did you go? I work at the Coliseum in the East District. I usually go to the wormhole to pick up garbage, and I don't go out much. It's been hard on you these days. Okay, Mia lay on Han Dong's back, enjoying the moment of peace that she had been waiting for. Her tensed nerves for more than 10 days were completely relaxed at this moment. The organizers of the Black Pyramid gave the participants half an hour to rest. Then they announced the rules of the promotion competition. The promotion competition is a special screening mechanism created by the first primitive pharaoh to select high-quality humans who can control the god's water and improve the overall standard of Fairy's capital. The original intention of the competition is screening, and there is no strict limit on the number of people. As long as you can reach the preset promotion standard, you will all become white slaves recognized by the pharaoh. This time, the theme of the promotion competition designed by the Pharaoh's first intelligent team is Escape. You will be sent to the Imhotep treatment area of the Black Pyramid in a completely unconscious state. In this competition, you are allowed to form teams of no more than 5 people and cooperate to escape. Chapter 9:13. Now I'll give you 15 minutes to form a team. At the same time, I'll explain the rules of the competition to you. Please listen carefully. Contestants who violate the rules will be disqualified at the very least. Those who violate the rules will be deprived of their lives and become the suffering dead at the bottom of the burial area. The rules were as follows. 1. During the competition, if you encounter a participant who is not in your team, you can fight normally, but you are not allowed to use lethal means. The Eye of Horus will monitor each of your actions during the competition. If it is determined that you took the initiative to cause the death of other contestants, you will be punished accordingly. 2. The theme of this competition is escape, and it is more dangerous than previous competitions. Therefore, there is a secret safe zone in the Imhotep treatment area, where contestants can avoid danger or choose to withdraw from the competition early in the safe zone. 3. No matter what method you use, as long as you can successfully escape from the Imhotep treatment area, you will be qualified for promotion. At the same time, the think tank also has a secret reward in the escape zone. I hope you can make the right choice between treasure and escape. When the rules were announced, Han Dong also received the corresponding system prompt. Main plot, first stage, the Great Escape of Imhotep, has been triggered. Requirements: complete the escape competition according to the requirements of the Black Pyramid. Rewards: 1. Unlocked identity. White slave, the ability limit will be adjusted from a 5% to a 20%. 2. There is a certain probability of obtaining high-quality slave equipment in the escape zone. Only by completing the first stage of the main plot can the subsequent plot, multiple branches, of Prometheus be triggered. Sure enough, this identity upgrade recognized by God's capital will unlock our ability limit. We must pass. If we fail here, it will not just be a matter of time delay, we will be killed by other human teams. White slave will not be held accountable for killing low-level slaves in God's capital. Han Dong's eyes flashed with a look of victory as he said to his teammates, "Once we lose here, we will basically be declared dead. The priority is to clear the competition. As for the treasure set in the competition area, it will not be considered. In addition, the safe zone will be the key to this escape competition. The reason why the think tank under the Pharaoh set up the safe zone is that it is basically impossible to escape from the competition area in one breath. We must use the safe zone to avoid some kind of undefeatable and terrifying individual." Okay. As the 15 minutes of team formation was up, the staff member wearing the golden mask reached out and touched the base of the obelisk. 1. A powerful mental shock wave spread out, causing all the contestants to faint. The severely hunchbacked golden-masked man began to rapidly transform. He was, in fact, the chief referee of this competition. Hundreds of facehuggers branched out from their robes, entangling all the unconscious contestants and bringing them to the escape area. This scene was also being broadcasted live across Fairy's capital. Due to the high quality of this year's contestants, the viewership rating and payment rate had reached the highest peak in the history of the promotion competition. The warden also turned on the payment mode and connected to Han Dong's first-person perspective. There are many elites participating in this competition. How far can you go? If you can be promoted successfully, the higher-ups will also grant you the title of warden. With your potential and strength, you will definitely succeed. Imhotep Treatment Area was equivalent to the most advanced biological hospital in Fairy's capital. Middle to high-level personnel who were seriously ill, out of control, or seriously injured would choose to spend a lot of money to receive treatment here. However, the Imhotep Treatment Area had undergone a large-scale renovation and expansion 2 weeks ago. The expansion had just finished, and this batch of participating slaves could be used to test the stability of the area. Han Dong, who woke up first, woke up his teammates one after another. The operating room? This is similar to the concept of a hospital in our imagination. After all, the area receiving treatment needs to meet the condition of cleanliness. The equipment set in the hospital is still full of biological style. The team was in an operating room about 30 square meters. The pure white floor tiles and walls were more in line with the hospital scene in everyone's impression. The bioenergy lamp hanging above their heads was flickering slightly due to a problem with the energy supply. However, the operating table was a large egg sac structure that could accommodate the human body. It could provide hemostasis, restraint, and mental stability effects. It's safe here. Mia, watch the door. If you notice anything, inform us immediately. Okay. The mask worn by Mia was integrated with the light bioarmor, which provided the ability of enhanced vision. She could see clearly even in a dark environment. She picked up a piece of lens scattered in the operating room and hung it at the door through a spider silk. She observed the external corridor through the principle of mirror reflection. Han Dong needed to organize a message. Miss Mary, what is privilege? Did you receive any hints? Meritus took out a piece of black paper made of special material from her waist. There were no written hints, only a pyramid image with eyes drawn with white paint. Only this thing, I didn't receive any more hint. This mark may correspond to the exit and the safety door, or it may correspond to the treasure room. Han Dong nodded. The probability of corresponding to the safety door is high, but it may also correspond to the treasure chest. Our primary goal is to find a safe zone. As long as we can occupy a safe zone, we will have enough time to consider the problem of this hospital. If there is no place for us to breathe and think, we will be eliminated sooner or later. Let's go. Just when Han Dong organized the team to find a safe zone as the primary goal, Mia, who was standing at the door, suddenly turned around and leaned against the back of the door. One hand covered her mouth, and the other hand trembled slightly. There was a trace of panic on her face, as if she saw something terrible through the broken mirror. Han Dong strode forward, closed the slightly open door, and pressed on Mia's shoulder with one hand. Considering that there might be something outside the door, he whispered in Mia's ear, "What did you see?" "I saw something floating from the end of the corridor in the mirror. What was it?" Han Dong was very strange. Mia was also an elite knight. She had experienced all kinds of events in the Destiny world, so it was impossible for her to be scared by a horrible ghost. I didn't see clearly what it was. It looked like a white thing. Although the ability was greatly limited, just a glance through the broken glass gave me a feeling of approaching death. "Let me see," Han Dong signaled everyone to step back. He gently pushed the door open a crack. He didn't have time to look through the mirror to see the scene on the corridor. A woman in white suddenly flashed through the crack of the door. This scene scared Han Dong so much that his right arm grew an eye and he took 3 steps back. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.